Hey everyone, it's Warriors NRL Fanatics here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. And tonight, this afternoon, I've got joining me from Warriors Fan TV. It's Tyrone for the first time on the channel. Actually, yeah, I've had a few of the lads over from the Warriors Fan TV. I've had Rio on, I've had Tarns on as well. But it's good to have Tyrone on for the first time on the channel. How you doing? And it's good to have you on.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you for having me on, and yeah, repping the crew from Warriors Fan TV, and yeah, can't wait to have a conversation about the boys.
Yeah, so today we're going to have a discussion around the season so far. We're going to have do a mid-season review on the Warriors because, of course, there's no action for the boys this week. We're on our second bye of the season, and yeah, we're 18 rounds into the season now, so we're halfway there, halfway point of the season now. So yeah, we're going to chat about all things Warriors, chat about reviewing the season so far, give our thoughts on some of the players and what we think's been happening this year. And hello to Tahi Bro in the chat. Good to see Tahi Bro in the chat. So I'm sure we'll get a few more viewers as the show comes along. So yeah, so if you haven't done so, please go and subscribe to Warriors Fan TV as well on YouTube. Go and follow those guys. They do some great work. So shout out to Warriors Fan TV. Go and give them a subscribe and a follow. And yeah, also don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel as well. Click the subscribe button, like the video. Make sure you click the thumbs up button on the video, and yeah, click the bell so you're notified for all the content on the channel next, and yeah, share the live stream as well. But before getting into the mid-season review, because usually when I get a guest on for the very first time, I like to hear their story. So why don't you give your story just on how you became a Warriors fan, your background, and maybe a little bit of knowledge for some people that may not have seen you before.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
I'll try and keep it short, and apologies if
yeah,
there's any heavy breathing because I'm trying to operate my mic as best as I can. But I'm sure the chat will let me know if I'm
yeah,
breathing too hard. But in terms of my background, history, and how I became a Warriors fan, so I actually started playing league when I was 5. So it was a long time ago, but at that time the Warriors were in year 1997. So my parents introduced me to league. Shout out to Mount Wellington Warriors here in Auckland. That's where I started and pretty much did my whole career. And through that, my parents wanted to just kind of get me around the game as much as they can. Obviously, to help me grow as a player, but also I'm sure for themselves, go to the games and enjoy a nice evening out and watching some footy. So that's kind of how I became a fan, and just grew up around a league community. And obviously, the Warriors being from New Zealand was just natural for most of us to kind of support them and be around them. Not all my friends, but for most of us, it was
yeah,
Warriors hard, Warriors till I die. So yeah, my parents actually pretty much bought a membership when I was a kid, and pretty much was membership for 15 years. So I used to go to games pretty much every single week. Wouldn't miss one. I have to say I didn't watch every single game because if you knew back then, there used to be a little bit of a patch where a lot of the boys and girls would go down and play footy. So as much as we're trying to watch the game, all of us are trying to beat each other by the north stand, playing against each other. So yeah, I have a kind of real, I would say, rich history being a fan of the Warriors. Love the game, played the sport all my life, and I feel like now that I'm older and I can actually understand and see a few more things, yeah,
yeah.
trying to apply myself to kind of analyzing the game a little bit more as well. So yeah, that's a bit about my history. And um, fun fact, I was fortunate to go to the 2002 grand final. Um,
Yeah.
s-
Oh,
unfortunately, it was a loss, but being able to kind of experience highs and lows of being a
yeah.
Warriors fan.
Yeah, yeah, and all of us Warriors fans know how that feels. Being brought up on the highs and the lows of a Warriors fan, especially.
Yeah.
Hello to Richard in the chat. Good to see you in the chat there, Richard. Hope you're doing well. He's saying here, um, yeah, good to see you, bro. Good to see you, Richard. In the chat there. Yeah. Just want to give just another quick question in regards to Warriors. Being a Warriors fan, who's your favourite player, past and present? I love to hear your favourite players.
Yeah, cool. So,
Yeah,
myself, I played halves and hooker.
yeah,
So it's only natural for me to, and especially when I became a fan and started watching Warriors. Stacey Jones was, the guy I watched. And try to watch how we played and try to apply that to my game. So definitely Stacey was the person. Um, Also, fortunately for where I'm from, we had a few people that actually played for the Warriors too. So like Sean Hoppy, and people like Clinton Torpy. So for me, this is just a natural following of those guys. And someone that I really enjoyed watching and just like seeing them play was someone like Brent Webb. So kind of
Yeah.
those are my guys. You can see I'm leaning to a lot of backs because that's where I fall.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of my kind of favorite players over the years.
Awesome. Yeah, and just one more question on that. What was your favorite Warriors game? Past and present. Or what would you say your favorite
Oh.
memorable Warriors games? Because there are quite a lot of good Warriors games over the number of years at the club. Although we've been through some lows as well, but we've also had some highs as well. Favorite game, favorite memory.
Yeah, good question. So I'm going to cheat here and say three of my favorite
Yeah,
games. I would have to say that two that led us to the grand final. So the one against the
yeah,
Sharks back in
yeah.
2002, and then definitely the one that we beat the Storm, and that Sean Johnson turned around, looked like he was going to pass, and then popped it to Louis Brown to get us to the
Mhm.
final. That was. I'll say those are second and third, but the first would have to be when we beat Melbourne Storm and Michael Witt did that try in the corner and look where everyone's
Oh
probably
yeah,
yelling at the TV like, "Are you going to put the board
yeah,
down?" He finally puts it down. That's probably for
yeah. I
me is
love it.
the best game of I've ever seen of the Warriors.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, Tahi Bros is saying good names. Ty is talking about the players you mentioned there. So
Yeah, Chabray.
yeah, yeah. So guys, like the live stream if you haven't done so already. Make sure you click that thumbs up button if you haven't done so already. And yeah, also don't forget if you are a new viewer to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and subscribe to Warriors Fan TV as well. Go and check them out on the platforms. But let's get into it. The review now for the season, for the mid-season review. So we'll start off with the results from this year so far. So look at the results after round 18. So two buys. Well, we've had one buy, but the second buy's coming up this week. We're sitting in 14th on the ladder. So 17 points, 7 wins, 1 draw, points of 356 against 388, differential of minus 32, home record of 5 and 3, and away record of 2 and 6. So, what do you make out of those results this season? What do you make of their position on the ladder at this point of the season?
Yeah. Well, long story short, not ideal.
Yeah.
I think many of us had high hopes going into the season, and
Mm,
not to say they didn't live up to the high hopes, because obviously they didn't with where we positioned on the ladder. But it's been an interesting year. It's been a real interesting year. A few high, actually a lot more high moments, but there's been a lot of low. And yeah, when I
yeah.
look at their ladder, it makes sense the Warriors that we've been watching over this year, but very
Mm,
disappointing from preseason. I was like top four easy. So
yeah.
yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, and I feel like with the season so far, we've obviously had those results. At the start of the season where we probably could have got up. Games like Melbourne, we're probably unlucky to lose that one down there in
Yep,
Melbourne. And then,
totally.
of course, some of those results at home this season, like the Sharks game at home in round one, we had got off to a good start in that game, and then we let it slip. And
Yep,
there was also, I think, the Titans game. The Titans game at home on Anzac Day was one of the, I think, was probably disappointing in itself, given the occasion on the day,
yep,
and our first opportunity of hosting an Anzac Day clash in a very long time. The Dragons game was probably the most disappointing result as well, away from home, and of course the Titans game was probably the worst one of the season. What if you look at the results this year? Which would you say probably well so far? Would you say is probably one of the most disappointing games in terms of results performances? What do you say there?
yeah. So obviously can't look past the Titans
Yeah,
game, especially because they were sitting last on the table and we got 60 points put on us. Like,
yeah,
it was lucky my remote didn't go into my TV. Let's put it that way, because it's a frustrating
yeah,
game to
yeah,
watch, and I'm sure many fans felt the same. But I think before that, the Dragons game was 100% one of the worst games. I think for me, like
mm,
to your point, I think a lot of the games prior to that were showing us like good for the first 20 minutes and then slipping. But that
yeah,
Dragons game was kind of like same 20 minutes or whatever. I think we got the first try, And then it just felt like for the rest of 60 minutes, it just felt like I was watching an under 10s team. It's like they couldn't set up their structure, the defense and just the attitude just didn't look like it was there. So yeah, besides the Titans game, the Dragons game kind of for me was like, wow, are we really that kind of team this year? So yeah, those are probably two of the ones. And then just every
Yeah.
game where we've been up the first 20 minutes and then
Yeah.
basically lost for the next 60 minutes, which felt like 2/3 of the games are so
Mhm.
far. So there's probably many more I could pick from,
Yeah.
but I'll just go with those two.
Yeah, and what do you put it down to? Like, how do you have a look into those games? Like, what is it down to? Do you think it's down to attitude, or is it mindset, or what do you put it down to? Because obviously defense last year was our strongest point, right? We always marked our defense as one of our key points of our season in 2023. And that's why we made the top four. So what do you put it down to? Is it combinations, or is it injuries, or is it just, what do you put it down to? The inconsistencies and you know, those results.
Yeah, good question. So, yeah, to pinpoint it on one thing would be difficult, but I would start with,
Yeah.
I guess, somewhat positive. I do think
Yep.
we've had a lot of injuries that
Yeah.
have led to kind of inconsistent pairings. Both, if we talk about our spine, it's changed a bit, as well as
Mm,
just having players coming in and out of the team because of injuries. So, I say that's a semi-positive because we've had a lot this year, which was is kind of hard to do well when you've got so much changes. However, in saying that, I
yep.
100% believe it's attitude. And the way that an attitude can be, I guess, influenced negatively is things happening that we may not we're not privy to see, so we don't get to see them training every day, every day of the week, and see what actually goes on during those moments. So there's potential things that could have happened that we ain't seen, but I feel like when pretty much hiding that we got from Titans, that
Yeah.
kind of opened it up and showed that the boys don't look like they want to play for each other. They look like they want to be out of this kind of game as fast as they can. That doesn't show me a team that has the attitude that wants to play for each other and wants to see each other win. Obviously, we've done okay with some of the games post that, so you can definitely tell
Yeah.
there's been either a spray or something to bring them together. But for
Mm,
me, I think injuries have played a big part, but I think there's something to do with the attitude. And I'm still big on Webby. I'm a Webby fan. I was a
yeah.
Webby fan, especially
Yep.
after last year, and just seeing some of his post-match interviews and seeing him talk. I've managed to go to like an event that was held at the Warriors, and hearing him talk, I was like, "No, this is a guy for the job." But I guess what I was kind of surprised by this year was just how inconsistent it felt like our culture. And I'm not saying like culture as in like it was necessarily um,
Mm,
this force that was bad, but I thought with bringing on more leadership like Capewell and RTS, I just thought we would have been
yeah.
able to kind of be a bit more managing the volatility that comes with such a culture that's doing good and then bad. Where it felt like this year, it felt like we were sometimes out of whack, and just kind of defied logic a little bit. But that's why I say that we're not privy to what's happening every time that they're together.
Yeah.
And there may be more things to this than we're seeing on the surface. So yeah, that's how I kind of wrap things up.
Yeah, well said there. And just actually got a comment here that I'll read out from Tahi Bro, saying here the positive is the up and coming development, uh, but the positive future ahead. Yeah, and we saw that with Leka on the weekend making his debut,
Yep.
which was awesome. It was awesome to see him make his debut, and I thought he was brilliant actually. What are your thoughts here? Just on the just going off what are your thoughts on the development of some of the young players coming through? We've got some good players coming through the pathways with Leka, like Jacob Laban,
Mhm.
Ali Liatawa as well. We've got some great young talent coming through. Also some of the new ones coming through, some new names, unknown names, but are coming through the system. What are your thoughts
Yep.
here on the junior players, the pathways here?
Oh, I think it's just amazing the talent that we see come through.
Yeah,
Like Lecker in the weekend, like, man, he definitely had to play probably more minutes than he was expecting because obviously there was so many injuries, and go out of position. I don't know if he's ever played centre before. I know he's a second row, but he didn't look too bad out there considering
Yep.
what had gone down. But then, yeah, you've just talked about Ali, Jacob. Like, I feel like we've got like a lot of good young players coming through, and I think the challenge here, right, is how do you bleed them in without making them, and we've had a lot of injuries, have to kind of face all the brunt. Now, obviously, in a perfect world, you have a team that's doing well, and then you can debut one every couple games. But I felt like we've had to rely on the New South Wales boys more than once. And
Yeah,
let's be honest, they've done pretty well when they've been up there. So I know that's probably questioned a lot of fans around, should we have more of them up there? But I
yeah,
think you just kind of have to kind of think about yes, the now, and also the future, and how do you make sure that they come in, get a good blast out playing NRL, get some confidence under their belt, and then continue to develop because their time's only starting, and hopefully we can keep a lot of those players within the Warriors.
yeah. Well said there. And I like what we're doing at the moment with having the Harold Maths and the SG Ball. Harold Maths, who won the competition this year, which was
Yep.
awesome to see. And obviously we've got our SG Ball Cup and our Jersey Flag Cup. And we've got our New South Wales Cup team. So a lot of these players that have played in the Harold Maths or the SG Ball have come into the New South Wales Cup as well. They've played a bit of the New South Wales Cup this season, which we've noticed quite a lot as well. So just looking at the chat here. So Jack is hello to Jack in the chat. Good to see you in the chat. He's saying pathways here setup is now excellent. One can only say thank you to the club owner and Robbo, who's throwing a lot of his own money into it. So, yeah, I agree. What are your thoughts on that comment there?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I know that I follow the New Zealand Warriors futures, and it's cool to see other stuff that they're doing that again, as a fan, you're not privy to unless you're there. So it's cool to see the development. And obviously we've been with COVID, those COVID years, we didn't really have that whole kind of foundation. So to see what they've been able to do to turn that around, and we're seeing some of those fruits with some of the young players coming through and playing in NRL. Now, I'll be honest, I haven't kept up to date with everything that's going on with the development, just besides what's on social media and all that. But when I see them play on the NRL field, I'm like, oh well, I'm sure this is just one of many or few of many that are coming through. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and just actually having a look at, I just want to have a look at some of the stats for the season so far. And I know I think we're pretty high in terms of ranked in terms of these stats here, and I want to get your thoughts on this because our stats here, Warriors are first in possession, right? 52%. Seat completion, 81. Line engaged, 418. Post contact meters, so 30,015. And then all runs, 3,437. Total kicks, 378. And all recipients, 7,569. So, what are your thoughts here on those stats? Because I think you look at our attack at the start of the season, I thought it was predictable to say the very least. I thought our attack every time, all teams were snuffing out our attack and our points. We've not been able to score a lot of points at the start of the season. We've at the back end of the season now. I think we've improved from the start of the season. So what do you look at? What do you make out of those stats?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to only since I can't remember, like maybe over 8-9 weeks now that I've been doing reviews. So looking at the game, looking at highlights, and then at the end I go look at stats. And one of the repetitive things that I keep pointing out is like we actually look good on these stats. Like for most of it, we're doing better than the other team in possession. Most of it, we're doing better in territory. We actually, you look at missed tackles, we actually have for most games a lot less than the other team. Obviously, besides the hidings, but most games we actually look better on the stats. There were a few there. One of the biggest one was kick defusals. We seem to have real trouble controlling when anyone does a bomb. And if you look at a lot of our games, especially around the 20-minute mark, when a lot of teams score, it's because someone's dropped the ball from a high bomb or whatever. So, but one thing remained the same was like these stats are not too bad. What's going on? And I feel like again, one of the challenges, right, with stats is that stats tells you a picture of the game, but it can't tell you
Yeah.
everything of the game.
No.
And I feel like for us, a big part of that it comes back to that attitude and effort stuff. I feel sometimes we may look good on the stats, and that's kind of like the general stats, but when you look at some of the body language, it didn't show the same. And I feel like that was both on defense and attack. Like Bulldogs game probably was more what is it? I could see it more if you actually watched a lot of our first 20 minutes. It was a tough game. No team was really getting in, but you see the boys spraying each other, meaning like someone's supposed to get somewhere. You're supposed to be there, and I'm like, man, this is what round 18
Yeah.
into the comp, and we're still trying to get our things in the right position. So for me, those stats ain't too surprising because I've kind of been reviewing them. But I think a lot of
Yeah.
fans would probably be thinking that or just general NRL fans will be thinking that Warriors have been getting not only pumped on the results but pumped in the stats. And I'm like, no, the stats tell a different story. So, somewhat a positive for the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean the stats are good, but it's probably it's definitely not quite clicked right, altogether. But just this commenting by Jack, and it's actually a good comment. So stats for the season look good, but yeah, we're falling from the ladder. The problem for me started with Sean Johnson being injured and unable to train with the side. Signs started in the Anzac Day game when we were underperformed badly. So, what are your takes on that comment there from Jacko?
Yeah, I think for myself, I think going back to the whole stats and
Yeah.
just kind of like we look all right. What's happening? I think this comes down to execution.
Mm.
And we've seen that in a lot of our games. We may set up for a certain structure, but their last pass or the kick is just not on. And I go back to what you said before around predictability. I was starting to get annoyed. Like if you know
Yeah.
you're playing the Warriors, there's going to be a kick, a right bomb to the right corner. Like it just felt repetitive, and I feel part of our challenge has been that I know there's probably a game plan and there's a structure. And we should stick to it as much as we can. But I think part of the challenge is that we haven't been adding variations to our play and actually making the defense question what we're going to do. So part of it is execution. So when we do have an opportunity, it's executing it. But also, I think a big part of it as well has been that we're not even playing eyes up. Sometimes we're just doing the bomb for the sake of bomb when it's like, maybe there could have been a not a shorter kick, but there could have been a grubber. There could have been something else to kind of keep them guessing because I just felt teams were just stacking up on that left hand corner and like, yeah, we got to get the ball and then start our set. And I feel like, I feel like Warriors weren't executing, but also we're kind of giving the other team an opportunity to kind of do what they wanted to do against us.
Yeah, and Jack is also saying in hindsight, Sean Johnson should have been rested for earlier. Likely Webby learned a lot from that. Interesting that Cleary is over resting Nathan. So yeah, well, just I know had a look at looking at it this season. Yeah, we've had a lot of our senior players. We've had injuries to with Tohu as well included. We've also had RTS out. CNK is going to be missing for a while now for the next couple of weeks. So, what are your thoughts just on SJ this season? There's a lot of debate in the Warriors circle around SJ and how his form hasn't been, like it was last year. But he's had also injuries that have really played a part in his form this season. So, what do you make out of this? Do you think Sean's been rushed back at the start? Has he been rushed back too early this season, like when he's had these injuries? What do you make?
Yeah, so I think he was.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say he was is because we were winning games, and he's just coming off
Mm.
an injury. And I think what Jacko pointed out there, around that kind of
Yeah.
same time as the Dragons, as we were underperforming. And when Tim Martin came on, it changed a lot of things. So I do think they rushed him back. But
Yep.
again, this is the conversations that the coaching crew and the players have, and I'm sure they trust to say if Sean Johnson's going to put his hand up, they're going to put him back in. So um, from probably their point of view, they weren't rushing him back because he felt he was ready, which makes a lot of sense from that perspective. But just from me, observing, it's like we were winning, we are doing really well. You know, there was no need to kind of change that up just now because we could have just seen it play out. And I think at that time was against Melbourne, so it would have been good to just see Johnson step away for this one and see if Tim Martin and CHC could actually take on Melbourne side. And then we all saw what happened. So I do
Yeah.
think got rushed back. I personally was an advocate to see him and Te Maire Martin play together. I know for traditionally, or for most teams, you usually have a half that controls the game and then one that's a running half. But I thought they could be a bit different by having two halves that could actually control a game and do stuff from both sides. And I
Yeah.
think we saw glimpses of that, but I also think we saw a bit of what I would say field rust from Sean Johnson. There was a lot of just mis execution on some stuff that then led to a whole lot of other stuff that happened in that game. So
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of his performance this year, obviously hasn't been the greatest, but I think that's got to do with the injuries and probably him just kind of going through. He's in his wouldn't say his last year this year, but in his last years, he's probably thinking, I want to play,
Mm.
and just hasn't kind of played out as he and probably us fans wanted.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people look at the results and say because when Sean Johnson was on the field, we were losing games, and I don't think you can put like the blame on Sean Johnson. I think some people are a little bit maybe overreacting in a way because they see the results when Te Maire Martin and CHT play and we're getting wins. That's great, they're doing well. But when Sean plays, people look at Sean and say he's the reason why we've lost games. So I don't think you can put it on Sean, right? I think some
100%.
people, I think some people are putting the blame on Sean a lot this year with our results when we lose games, which I don't. I mean, he's not playing well. Don't get me wrong, he's not playing well, but also his injuries have also played a part for me. So and Jack is just saying here, playing two halfbacks. He reckons he's not a fan of the playing two halfbacks. So what do you reckon here on this comment here by Jacko?
Oh, definitely
Playing with two
correct.
halfbacks. Yeah.
Definitely correct, because most people run with a running half and a controlling half. But I would like to point out, if we go look at
Yeah.
a Queensland team, they had a Jonathan Thurston and a Cooper Cronk. Both are not non-runners. They
Yeah.
can control the field. Now, people are going to go, you can't compare, two like that to Te Maire Martin, Shaw Johnson, but it can work. And I think what let unfortunately their partnership down was that I don't think they weren't on the same page. I actually thought when you actually look at the receipts, they actually were controlling the game relatively even. A little bit more
Yeah.
Johnson, but it was actually relatively even. Where we're seeing previously has been more higher Johnson, and then Te Maire Martin gets a go here or there. So they were evenly distributing it, but it was execution, and I think that's got a lot to do with field rust. Like when you haven't been out there, and like we pointed out before, haven't been training with the boys, that ball's not going to go where it needs to be. That kick ain't going to go where it needs to be. So I'm still high on that potentially working, but I don't think we should
Yeah.
be rushing there. I think Te Maire Martin and CHT are what we need to stick with going into the end of the season.
Yeah, and you just said it there. I was going to ask you that question in regards to what you do like for the rest of the season with the combination because like I'm a massive Luke Metcalf fan. I really am a big fan of Luke Metcalf. I thought at the start of the season when he was doing quite well for the first couple of games, and it was gutting when he got injured against the Knights. I was at that game at Go Media Mount Smart Stadium in Auckland. I went to that game, and I was so gutted when he came off the field. You know, he looked dejected himself too, and that was the last time we saw of Luke Metcalf on the field. And he was coming back from an injury last year. He was great last year, Luke Metcalf. And then he had an injury at the back end of the season, come the finals time, and then he had a similar bad luck of injury this year. So I think at the moment, if you look at the halves right now, you've got to stick with CHT and Te Maire Martin for the rest of the season. And some people might say, look, what if Sean Johnson comes back? Do you put him back in there straight away? I don't know. Do you think he goes straight back in there? Because we saw him once he came back from injury. He was straight back in the side. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'll touch on the Luke Metcalf stuff because
Yeah.
I like start of the season I had Sean Johnson, Luke Metcalf. There's definitely
Mm.
our NRL,
Yeah.
half pairing, and then Te Maire Martin and CH Chanel can work their way in, but play New South Wales Cup to kind of hopefully work on their partnership. But unfortunately, obviously,
Yeah.
Luke getting injured changed things, and then Sean Johnson getting injured, it changed a lot of things. And kind of what was a blessing is that Te Maire Martin and Chanel actually got time to kind of work on their partnership, and I think we've been able to see that now take place in NRL and see what it can do. Now, again, if we look in the weekend's game, I wouldn't say Tim Mighty Martin had the best game in terms of him. I liked
Yeah,
at the end of the game, he put his hand up and said that wasn't his best game. Because the Broncos game before, man, those kicks were like crazy good. Those he was
yeah,
putting it wherever he wanted off his foot. Where the Bulldogs game just a little bit different, and maybe fatigue. I don't know how much tackles he did, but I felt like I was watching him tackle a lot more. He was in there, so maybe there's a bit more fatigue and
yeah,
just couldn't execute as well as he could. So in saying that, I still think that these boys have been playing well enough to kind of continue. Now, for me, I would say form kind
yeah,
of matters. So if we start seeing this pairing start dropping off and start going back to, or not going back, but going into a place where they're just not doing anything, then I see no,
mm,
maybe Sean Johnson comes back in, and if Luke is all right by the end of the season, maybe he gets a go too. But if these guys are winning every week, and it's big reason as part of those two contributing to that, I don't see
yeah,
why you break it up. And I know a lot of people have said, you can't put Sean Johnson in New South Wales Cup, but for me personally, if he's got, um, you know, I don't see it as a bad thing. I actually see if part of his challenge has been rust, then maybe
mm,
applying himself with the New South Wales Cup team to just kind of work on his, not necessarily combinations, but just getting their ball where it needs to be, kicking where it needs to be, then he'll be prime and ready to come back into the NRL. I know he's a bit older and people wouldn't want to see that. I've said on a previous thing, we've seen like Jared, he played first game this year, and in the lower grades, as
yeah,
well as we saw Nelson Asafa Solomona, obviously for different reasons. But I think for me, it's going there isn't going to affect him, and there shouldn't be so narrative around going New South Wales Cup. But if it's to get his execution, get it going, um, then if the time's right and he's ready to kind of jump into NRL, then we can push him straight in there, knowing he's gonna deliver for us. So yeah, I think keep it as it is,
yeah.
and hopefully he's not definitely not rushed back, but also hopefully get some time under his belt to kind of work on his game before he does come back.
Yeah, and you'd hope that this season won't he doesn't go out with an injury. Like you'd hope that it's not. Yeah, he's not retiring. Like if he's retiring, hope it's not off the injury at the end of the season, because it'd be a shame if he's injured and then that's his season and that's his final season. It'd
Hmm.
be a shame to go out in that way. So just a comment here from Michael. Hello to Michael Mendoza saying agreed. They persist for too long with Sean Johnson. Defenses know he couldn't run and it's far easy to read. So
Yeah,
yeah, I agree that. And hello to Jazz in the chat as well. I just saw Jazz in the chat. I was supposed to say hello to Jazz. So good to see you in the chat. Yeah, Jazz and Jacko saying once a player can train with the team for over a week, he needs time to recover. Richard's also saying here, bummed and feel for Sean Johnson because if he comes back, he will do his magic again. And Jacko's also saying here, agree. Fanatics Metcalf is a quality player, but likely leave him until the next year. Now he wants a 7 jersey, so if Sean Johnson retires, it will be interesting. So yeah,
yeah,
which will be interesting to see what Sean does at the end of the season, whether he goes on for another season. With Fisher Harris coming next year, whether that's going to motivate him to want to stay on for another year, play alongside Fisher Harris at the Warriors. So yeah, and Jazz is saying here, I'd love for Metcalf to go to Cup and get the reps in before pre-season and to further develop his craft in first grade next year. I absolutely agree. So if he's fit again, if he does get fit again this season, then yeah, I would love to see that too on that one. But just also RTS this season. What are your thoughts on how RTS has been going? Because he's also had a bit of a tough season to date. In the centres, it's not a position where he's usually played before. He's played a lot of fullback. We're seeing him play a bit of on the wing this year. Where do you think his best position is, and how do you think he's been going this year, RTS?
yeah. So I know this is I've got a bit of an unhinged take on this. I actually think he's been doing all right.
Oh
Um,
yeah, all right, yep,
And the reason why I say that is because
yep,
obviously, offensively, he's going to always take those meters and runs. And I
yep,
think personally, it was one of his best games in the weekend when he was playing
mm,
centre. Obviously, he got shifted to fullback, But I thought it was one of his better games. Now, I think the challenge is that us fans are so used to him doing like lighting it up and doing something so electric every single
Yeah.
game that we haven't seen a lot of that. But I challenge everyone to actually go look at his running stats, and he's actually
Yeah.
challenging a lot of the top centers in terms of attack. Again, hasn't been the Roger that we know that we can see, but I'm like, I feel like he hasn't been as bad. But I think our perception of what he can do is probably hasn't lived up to it. But defensively, I think that's probably where his most work needs to be done. For myself, having played the game, I've always known that center is actually one of the hardest places to defend. People might
Yep.
say, it's a bit easy, but if you look through all our centers, we've had some good centers in our time, but we've had some real dominant offense attacking centers, and then defensively they just can't read it, and that's just because you've got fullbacks and halves. Well, halves that are able to distribute to whoever, but then you've got fullbacks that can like run at pace and cut through you so easily. So I think he's still learning defensively. I don't think he's strong there yet. I thought game in the weekend though, like every time Cherry came, he was there. Like I feel like he was starting to get his reads right. But in terms of him and what we expect of him, hasn't been there. In terms of him, like slowly developing as a center, I personally think he's actually been doing rather better than people are putting out there on him. But I think also one of the challenges is that he's also played in the position when we've had some pretty shocking games and haven't been doing too well. And I feel like when he had Timothy Martin on the right side with him last week, I was like, no, we're starting to see what he could potentially do. You saw that tip on he did to Dalen. Like he's got that
Yeah.
little soft touch to him, and he's obviously going to make a ton of yards coming out of the backfield for us when they do those kicks. But we know RTS can do, or not do a lot more, but we know there's a lot more in him to still come out, and I think us fans are wanting to see more of that, which I'm sure he will want to put on a show for us as well.
Yeah, and hello to CJ in the chat there. Hope you're doing well, bro. It's good to see you in the chat. I think I'm just reading this comment here by Jacko. He's saying that Artie said his best game at centre last week, but going forward, I like Rocco and Ali Lautoa as the first choice centres. So, what are your thoughts? Because I'm a massive Rocco Berry fan. I'm a big fan of Rocco Berry. What are your thoughts here on the comment here made by Jacko? Do you agree, or you have a different view on what he's saying here?
Oh yeah, it's a tough one because we've
Yeah.
got interesting center kind of dilemma. Because I think Pompey, there was a couple games where he showed defensively. He just was missing and wasn't reading well, but offensively and some of obviously he has kicking to his game, which kind of alleviates someone like Sean Johnson and all that to do the kicks. That kind of adds to him, but
Yep.
yeah, Barry and Ali, I like them as players too. Now we haven't seen much of Ali. When we did, he played in that Panthers game, and he was so strong offensively and defensively. I think the ankle kind of made it hard for him to kind of, what is it, defend quite well because there was a few times they broke through. But I like them as potential players of potentially now in the future. If I had to pick centers, and I guess this is my opinion. People might not like it. For going out, I actually would like to see Pompey and RTS kind of still stay there and see what happens. I will point out though, I see a lot of teams have been putting backs on their benches now. Traditionally,
Yeah.
that was never a thing. You have a hooker and three forwards, so we've seen a lot more backs kind of sitting on the bench. So maybe there's an opportunity, whether it's a RTS, a Berry that sits as a 17th man as backup for that. I don't know. I'm not going to say I know which option is right now, but for me, in terms of what I'm seeing, I don't mind Pompey and RTS there because I feel like Timothy Martin's unlocking RTS's kind of himself on attack, and he's starting to get his defensive reads right. I personally wouldn't put him back to winger. When he was young and he was playing the Roosters, he had the likes of Sonny Bull inside and someone coaching him, and he was a lot. I feel a lot more faster back when he was a younger person. I feel like now the kicking, he went fullback and he unfortunately dropped the ball. With one of those bombs on the weekend, I just feel like winger is just like he's gonna have to learn again. He played all right when he played that one wing, but I feel like they kind of didn't target him. I feel like he's actually a centre or obviously fullback, but I feel Chance is still doing all right in their position. But hey, maybe with his injury, does Tuopiki go there or does Roger go to the back and we put in Rocco
Yeah.
and Ali? I'll hate to be making that decision, but we've got
Yeah.
an interesting dilemma and we've got a future of some good young centres coming through. That's for sure.
Yeah, well said there. And of course, with the team coming up, well, name next week for the Raiders game. What we're going to do with fullback, is it going to be Tane there? I like to see Tane back in the first grade side. I think when we've seen him play, especially against Penrith down there at Suncorp when his Magic round, I thought it was really very good. But we haven't seen him since that game. What are your thoughts on Tane? Are you a massive fan of Tane? Because I think he's a great talent. It's hard for him to get into the first grade side because you look at the fullbacks and players we've got. We've got RTS. We've got CNK there. What are your thoughts there on Tane?
Oh, I like Tane as a player,
Yeah.
man. He's can get around the park.
Yeah.
He's our version of a Walsh, a version of our Falongo. That can small but can nippy and can get around the park. And he's just another player that's waiting in the back for his time. And every time like he's come through, I feel like he's done well, even for the first couple of games. I feel there's always a couple of errors in his game, but I actually didn't mind him there. But for me, still first choice fullback is Chance. But now that he's out, I hope to see him there personally. I hope to see Tane at fullback, Roger at centre, and then obviously if Tane goes down, we've got Roger to go there and fill in their position. But I like Tane as a player. It's just unlucky how it is, but we'll see how the rest of the season goes. He might get a lot more game time.
Yeah, and Jacko's just saying here, watching Ali Lato, and he's too good for the grade and get him in first grade or likely another club, will. So yeah, it is tough if you're Webby. You're picking the team each week, and you don't know whether to bring in a young player or do you keep the more established players in the side? Because I know there's a lot of debate around the Warriors world that some people say that Webby's maybe a bit stubborn. Does he want to pick? Does he not want to pick the young players? Or I've seen people with comments like that who say he's a bit too loyal to a lot of the established players. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you believe that Webby's a bit like he loves picking. When he picks a team, he doesn't make a lot of changes, right? Even with a loss, whether we lose a game or win a game, he's pretty stuck loyal to a lot of the players this season. Sometimes I've felt like he could probably pick a few other players in the side, but with injuries and that, changing the squad too much, it's to make a lot of changes. It just affect the side altogether. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I with it running anything, you want consistency, right?
Yeah,
Hey, shout out to the refs, we want consistency. But when it comes to a team, you want consistency, and I think the
definitely.
challenge this year has been we haven't been winning with sticking to the same squad, and I'm a big believer that you should stick to them, especially if you believe in that crew. But
Yeah,
I think one of our biggest missing pieces or things that I think we needed to relook at was that I feel like we lacked a little bit of enthusiasm, bit of energy, and that comes from putting young blokes in there to kind of like it's their debut or it's their 1 or 2 games in the NRL. They're going to come with a bit more energy, and I feel like big part of that's been missing from our team. Obviously, we're not the fastest team on the paddock too, so we've got a lot of older guys
yeah,
that are probably not as fast as they were when they were younger. So I feel like we miss a bit of enthusiasm, a bit of energy, and I personally felt that we could have changed some of that a little bit earlier to kind of get the boys going. Like if you think about like Blicker in the weekend, I even go back to like when Zion did his debut, when
yeah,
Roach was there, it was exciting to see. Like and it just brought this like I felt like they brought some energy that the older boys or the more of the leadership kind of boys were like, oh man, we got to step up too. However, in saying that, I don't think you put 10 of them all in at once because that's when you kind of get too much erratic energy and potentially, for them playing at New South Wales Cup, obviously it's the feeder or the one step down before NRL. It's still a different pace. It's still a different ball game. So I personally think he could have maybe introduced more and kind of done something a bit more different during the middle period, which was like 4 or 5 games ago, and just kind of started like changing it up a bit. But at the
yeah,
same time, I don't want to see 8 New South Wales players playing because I feel like you're just going to get a whole new team. We're not really going to have a system around it. It's just going to be too erratic. So yeah, uh, the good thing is a lot of these guys have been really well when they've come up. So gives me a lot of confidence that we've got some good players coming through. And I think going back to that question around Ali and play other teams chasing, I'm quite
Yeah.
sure a lot of our young players are going to be chased by other clubs just by their performance at NRL and probably stuff they're doing in New South Wales Cup. And I think this comes back to the culture, right? Are you creating a culture where I
Yeah.
don't care if I get offered $1 million, like I actually like the club, I want to be here and apply myself to it. So I
Mm.
would say before the season, I thought, yeah, man, this looks like it. The
Yeah.
people like artists are coming and they can see it too. Now through this whole thing, I'm like, it's been a little bit shaky, and I wonder how much that might influence someone that's young that gets offered 500K that they've never seen before to go play NRL tomorrow in a Tigers team or whatever team. That can be enticing given the way that the season's gone. But I hope not. I hope that doesn't go
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, well, we've had in the past, we've had obviously problems with attracting players, especially from Australia, or keeping local talent in New Zealand. And you can't keep them all, obviously, but you'd love to keep most of them as possible, and you'd love to see them, put on the Warriors jersey more than someone would go and put on a Broncos jersey or a Rabbitohs jersey, or sort of stuff. But just here a
Mhm.
comment here, which is a good comment here by Tahi, bro. Is saying here kids are considering playing at home because they can see pathways developing in the club, which is a congratulations to what has been achieved. And yeah, and a big shout out to the owners, and Mark Robinson, Andrew Webster, Cameron George, all the people in the background who are making this things possible, um, to build a pathways program. And you look at we've got an NRLW side coming back into the comp in 2025 as well. So yeah,
Mhm.
things are just starting to build up pretty nicely. We've had that struggles over the years, not being able to produce pathways because we know we've been based in Australia. So, and Tahi Bro saying here, limited introductions. That is a byproduct of having a lot of injuries this year. Yeah, it's just there's been a lot of injuries this year. There's been a lot of
Mhm.
injuries throughout the season, and a lot of teams have had it. The Warriors have had a lot of them as well, but we've not been the only team. They've definitely not helped us. What are your thoughts here on that comment there by Tahi in terms of the injuries? We've seen a lot of the a lot of the star players, the key players out for quite some time, like the likes of Nathan Cleary. We've had the
Mhm.
Moses as well, Ponga. Of course SJ as well. A lot of the high name players as well. Some of the regular first graders. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that comment?
Yeah, like I think this ties into the conversation around those guys applying their time to New South Wales Cup as well.
Mm,
You can't win a comp without 30 players, and I think for me
yeah,
that speaks to a lot of like injuries. You're going to get injuries, so you're going to get players having to step up, but also B, like a good again. Doesn't mean that every New South Wales Cup team or Queensland Cup team has been winning because of this, but if you've got a good young side coming through or a good team that's below you, challenging you every week while you're out there training,
yeah,
it's only going to do wonders. And if everyone's healthy, everyone's able to apply themselves week in week out, that's how you win a cup. And like for me, again, I know people use them as the pedestal because we have to look at the results. But you look at Penrith from the side that won it, or even the year before, they've gone through so many wholesale changes. Obviously, kept some of the couple of players, but a lot of it's changed. A lot of it's
yeah,
changed, and a lot of young blokes are coming through to that club, and they've had to refigure out like which is, I want to see us have that problem. They're having to like really think about their future because it's like everyone's taking their players. They're having to adapt to a whole new squad. Well, same system, few couple of players, but like basically a lot of different players coming in. So for me, going back to the New South Wales Cup stuff, going back to us
mm,
actually wanting to win a comp, we have to have a squad of 30 that is ready to play week in week out, as much as you can with injuries and all that. To actually want to have a chance at winning a comp. And that's why I think if you're a young bloke thinking like I'm not in the 17, I'm like, bro, if you're right there, you're there. Don't you're still going to get a chance. But again, in saying that, if you haven't seen 500k, a million in your life, people have to be kidding themselves to say that they wouldn't think about what that provides for themselves and their family too. So, yeah, I think there's a lot more to it than just what we see on the field.
Yep, well said there. And just on these injuries that Jacko just mentioned, you can't blame injuries, which I'm not. They play a part. I know you can't deny that they play a part in the season, but he's just saying you can't blame injuries for failure. It's part and parcel of the NRL. But the injury to Sean Johnson hurt a lot, much like the Reynolds injury at the Broncos has seen him fall on the ladder. So what are your thoughts there on that comment?
Yeah, like I think it touches right on it, right? When you have your key players not there, you see teams like not only us, but like the Broncos, you're not able to, and I've put likes of someone like the Eels. I think there's a lot more challenges they've got going on, but they've had
Yeah,
a lot of their key players out, and where are they sitting? Pretty much around where we are. There's
yeah,
a lot of teams that haven't had their team, and not to say that that you should be, just focus on your key players, but we saw, you can just look at history, look at everything. Those players, when you have them and they're healthy and they're doing well, obviously it leads to a lot more great results than losses. But at the same time, this is where I keep saying, at the same time, with their next, it's kind of their whole next man up mentality that has to be there, and I feel we've had that somewhat with the Warriors. Just unfortunately, we've also had some, I don't know, just some weird things going on with our. I feel like our attitude and our
yeah.
desire to play every week.
Yeah, and just looking at these comments. So Tahi Bros is saying here, Murata during the trials, Met's broken leg, Capewell, Carter, John Jazz, consistent injuries, and of course Sean Johnson, now CAK, all senior players, and there's also Walks and Tohu. Says Jazz. Tohu had a wrist injury. Yeah, it's quite a number of players. Every week you look at the Warriors website, the injury list keeps getting added.
Mhm.
And I don't know what that is to do with, whether that may be a training thing, or I don't know what would you put it down to, because are they overtraining them, or how do you look at
Yeah.
it? Because I know a lot of teams have had the injuries this year, but we're getting these quite regularly throughout the season. Do you put it down to maybe the training being too overworked, or
Mm. Yeah, like a bit overtrained. I don't know, because obviously we
yeah,
don't get to see their training and what
mm,
they actually do. And again, if we look across the board in terms of NRL teams, I actually haven't seen the latest update in terms of how many injured players per team, but I know Warriors were kind of up there in terms of a lot of players being injured compared to other teams.
yeah,
Um, but I actually think it comes down to the actual game. So the game that we
mm,
have now is a lot faster. Obviously, these boys are in the gym. These guys are stronger. I think that's just a
yeah,
lot down to just wear and tear, and we're starting to see players kind of wear a lot faster than we've seen in previous years. So I think for me, I can't comment on training, but
mm,
by the games that I'm watching, it feels a lot more faster. And the sixer games, there's a lot more battling,
yeah,
ram, and things going on every week that I feel like it kind of makes sense why we're getting injuries. And do we want to slow down the game so we don't get as much injuries, or do we want to take things out of the game? I don't know, but I hope not, because I think the product that we get to see most times, I'm going to be honest and say the officiating is starting to kind of hurt.
yeah,
For me, in terms of
yeah,
the game, not just because of Warriors, but I think there's just been a lot of inconsistency when I go
mm,
from watching other games. It's like, man, seems like
yeah,
the officiating needs some work on. But in terms
yeah.
of the athletes, oh man, like it's hard to not watch league, because you just see some amazing things every week. So yeah, training, I don't know, but I definitely think it's wear and tear, and it's just a lot faster, a lot stronger now, and you have to kind of build yourself for it.
Yeah, and it's tough to really say how these injuries happen, because of course you look at the game, the quickness of the game now to what it was back years ago. Um, it's a lot quicker, and that's why players are getting a lot more injuries. Um, so just here, Jacko saying, as Matty John said, given a losing team an excuse for failure, they'll keep losing. He's gone about that, which I mean is fair, which is fair enough. You look at the results and you say where we are at the moment. you got to say it's not good enough because we were like sitting in the top four last year or bouts near the top four at this point of the season. And we all expected the team to be doing a lot better than what they are right now. So hello to Ryan in the chat. And I think teams are getting a lot of injuries. Is a connect say that word, but coincidental. There's always going to be a few teams every year who get hard by injuries. Yeah, and it is a bit unlucky. It generally does happen to a lot of the teams as well in the comp there. Just I want to ask you this question actually. On Webster, Webby this year, and just looking at his game plan. What are your thoughts on how that's transpired this season with the game plan in terms of their attack and defence, and how do you think the boys are responding to that game plan when you look at the games we've played this season?
Yeah, well, again, we talked about that whole predictability, and I think to be more specific on that, it's been our last kick options, or our last options have been predictable. But I think I can't remember what game it is. I mean, it might have been the Broncos game. But after it, I had Timothy Martin and Chanel talking. They were talking to the commentators, and they were like, "Oh, how did you guys find yourself out there?" I can't remember exact words. I'm paraphrasing, but they basically said, "Oh no, Webby trusts us. He's told us to kind of play what's in front of us." So for me, I don't know if that was late into the piece he's told him to play what's in front of us, but it kind of feels like they've been given the permission to obviously do the game plan, but also play what's in front of them. And I feel like that's what's been missing is the playing what's in front of them. Now we stick to structure so it gets us up the field and we all know what we're doing, but I feel like our last kick options have resulted into this kick to the corner, and we saw a lot more of it in the game on the weekend with the Bulldogs. But that's got a lot to do with their defense and them putting pressure on us, and us trying to just let's get it down the field and get us boys up there so we can play over there. But I feel for a lot of the games that we've lost, and attitude first, but also secondly, I feel like we've just kind of resorted to this kick into the corner where I'm like, man, sometimes I felt like the side was short. Why don't we just try something a little bit different? Again, not to say it needs to come off and it's going to lead us to a try, but just to keep them guessing. So I think for me, is it the game plan? Because some of these boys have said that maybe they've been given the opportunity. So I'm like, okay, we need to see a bit more eyes up footy. And I feel like if you look at a lot of our wins, it's because they played what's in front of them, but not the whole game. We want to make sure we stick to a structure. So we actually look, or not look, but actually, get to our territory, get up the field, and actually play footy. So yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, and I think just looking, of course, like Webby, it's only his second year as an NRL coach, right? And there have been some moments I think the season where he's probably maybe had a look at some of the selections each week. Maybe they've not come off. Of course when they put Jazz, I think not Jazz, they moved Jackson. Was it Jackson Ford or I think someone? I just can't try to remember who they moved to prop. I know it was
it was Ford. Yeah,
Ford.
Prop.
Yeah, Jackson Ford at prop. Look, I thought at the start, and I thought it was the right move. I didn't mind it, but after a while, it sort of maybe come off a bit. What are your thoughts here on like some of the the changes he makes each week? And like in terms of his bench, what he does with his bench and his rotation, the injuries also play a part as well. But what are your thoughts here on that?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think I can't remember exact games and exact moments, but I do think some of the bench has been interesting. And I've felt like they've experimented a lot. And people might, but it's been the same team every year. But I'm like, you talked about Jackson Ford going to prop. He's always been relatively a second row. May have played a couple games with Dragons a prop. I actually don't know off by heart, but you can tell he's been more of a second row coming off the bench as well, type player. And then you think about the Walker and Tohu. I know Walker last year was even relieving Tohu at 13, but he started him sometimes this year. There's been, and then you've got the centers have been playing around with them a bit. So I feel like there's been a lot more experimenting, and you see that mostly on the bench. I think that's got a bit to do with like the team we're playing and the potential, where they see an advantage. So they're changing the bench to kind of apply whatever advantage they saw. But at the same time, I feel like just some of the decisions were just maybe too heavy relying on not consistency, but heavily reliant on a history of a player. Where I feel like after a couple of games, you kind of have to kind of think, maybe we need to make some changes. And if this player is gonna feel some type of way about those changes, then that's got a bigger, there's a bigger concern to that because, as I said before, I feel when you're trying to trying to win, you have to have a team of 30. So you want a team that's like wherever you need to put me, coach, I'll be there, type kind of mentality. So yeah, I just feel some of the changes were just there's a lot more experiments this year, and rightfully so with injuries. But I thought we could have probably kept someone like Timothy Martin playing instead of Rusty Sean Johnson back as an example. And I kind of felt like we needed to kind of put Tohu on the bench a lot more earlier. I feel like you look at his, I don't know about his body now, but I feel like the bro's banged up. It feels like he's not able to be that Tohu we know a couple of years ago. But Dylan Walker just adds a lot more speed in terms of that middle. And I feel like a lot of the execution, especially on our plays, was because we were running it a bit too slow. Where he brings on speed, still structure, still able to kind of hit straight up when he goes into his shape, or they go into shape. So yeah, I just feel like we lacked a bit of speed and lacked a bit of execution, but I think that was because the coaching weren't trying to change anything too early.
Yeah, and just on, I think it was Dylan Walker. Was actually the one I was supposed to mention, not Jackson for. It was Dylan Walker that they moved him to prop. And I found that was one of the most oddest calls that we made this year, and it didn't pay off. It didn't work. So I'm glad he's not put him back there again. If you're going to pick Dylan Walker, like he is probably suited to that utility role off the bench. Or he starts. But lately, I think he's been a lot better at starting games in that lock position. I think a lot of people, when I named my team and I didn't put Tohu Harris there, and people questioning why am I not putting Tohu Harris on the side? And I thought, look, look at his minutes, right? In limiting his minutes because he's always banged up, right? Tohu Harris, he's always he's always in there physically. You never doubt his efforts areas, but I think what Webby's doing now is he's giving him lesser minutes and playing off the bench, and I think that's probably a better way for Tohu Harris moving forward. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I agree. I do think getting a bit more juice out of him because again, he doesn't lack effort. You see him; he's going to try every week. And I don't want to put it down to age, but I also think that it just seems like the wear and tear. It's wear and tear, and hope maybe a blessing with his wrist injuries that he gets some time off so his body can recover a little bit. I don't even know if that's scientifically going to actually help, but in my head, maybe having some time away from the game and maybe just focusing on a bit of fitness away from it might help. I don't know, but I do think he hasn't been able to kind of be a dominant force out there, and I think partly is because he's running with not injuries but just looking a bit slower than usual. But him coming off the bench, like we've seen it this year. I feel like we've seen a really good, and we feel safe. I kind of feel safer with him coming off the bench because I know we know what he offers, and he doesn't have to come on and do much. Just do his tackling. Obviously, get their ball straight off the ruck from Egan, and play some ball plays now and then. And I feel, and he's also taking hit ups. I think one of the craziest things I've seen is despite him being all banged up, but him coming off the bench, he's been doing kind of the prop runs off the kickoffs, and I'm like, oh, this guy's that keen to do the kickoffs. So yeah, I personally think he should be coming off the bench because we've seen a lot more out of him from the bench.
Yeah, and just looking at some of the comments here. I think you've gone to this one here. So Tahi Bros is saying he protects the young ones well enough off the bench. Ryan's also saying here, I do think we've rushed Sean Johnson and Tohu back. And Tahi Bros saying again a byproduct of Tohu having long long shifts through injuries. Yeah, and that's what that is the thing. Like, how long is Tohu going to go on? Much longer. That's the big question. How does he feel about going on much longer? Like, that's the big question mark. And I think giving him less time and off on the bench, giving him minutes from the bench, I think just keep him fully refreshed, keep his body fully refreshed as well. And Mickey's saying here was hell of an effort from the Waz. Michael very proud to us talking about the Dogs game, and yeah, it was a very good effort from the boys, and you can't fault that effort as well. So so just one more comment. I'll just read this. I was exhausted just watching. So yeah, he's saying here.
We all were. We all were.
Yeah, we all were. But just looking at it now, the back end of the season. What are your thoughts? Just looking at this back end of the season we got coming up. We've got the Raiders next week. I think we've got lots of the Tigers and that at home as well. Do you think we can still make the 8? Is it still possible for you? Because a lot of Warriors fans are saying maybe this is the season's already done. Some people might be writing us off. Some people are saying we can still make it. What do you think we can still make the top 8? Because it's going to be a bit of a tough one because we're going to have to win almost every game. If you look at it, probably 6 or 7 wins might get us in the 8. But we've got to string wins together, and we've definitely struggled to string wins together this season. So, do you think we can still get in there?
Yeah, definitely think we still can get there. And that's probably speaking a little bit into my own bias as a Warriors fan. I always think we can make the magical run when needed. I did see something that said like we're 7% chance of making it, which again, when you need 1%, a Warriors fans 1%,
1%,
it's not enough. So we still can, looking at mathematics. And looking at potential, hopefully the results go away for some of the other games, and we win all our games. So yes, we can still make it 100%. I think for me the interesting thing is going to be how we do against these teams, because if you actually look at, we've got from a ladder perspective, we've got a quite favorable draw. We don't have a lot of teams that are doing relatively well. I think maybe besides, is it the Sharks? Is it the Sharks and maybe Bulldogs? Those teams maybe, but a lot of the other teams are in the middle. And I think for me, it's like the interesting is if we look at our games, like yes, we've lost to a couple of good teams, but we've lost to a lot of teams that are middle or lower than us. So I think that's what makes me nervous is what Warriors team are we going to have show up for these last games? Are we going to get a team that's locked in like last week and they're going to try, to be there every minute, every second for the team, and obviously execute as well. Or are we going to get a team that's going to self-implode? And we've seen that against the lower ranked teams again. Like, go back to that Tigers game, Titans game. Sorry, that game, man. Like, it's traumatic even thinking about it because they were last place. And again, you can't say a team that's last place in NRL is a bad side. You got to treat every side well, but it's like there's a reason why they're down there, or they've come up a bit. But there's a reason why teams are down there. It's because they're not doing well. So if they're not doing well, and then we're losing to a team that's not doing well, that's a lot of question marks, a lot of red flags. And for me, that's probably been my biggest surprise, as I said before. It's like there's a volatility with our attitude, and I just thought with the leaders that we have in our team, with the abundance of those, we've got heaps in our team, that we would have kind of I can't think of the word right now, but kind of middled that out, and actually we're able to kind of respond better. And I think we kind of have been in the last couple of weeks, but we need to see that obviously for the rest of the season. So I definitely think we can make it mathematically, and believe we've got the capability, but obviously it depends on which Warriors team shows up every week.
Yeah, and just Jacko's just saying here, having a bye in the last round to react is a good react. I think he's trying to say here. For finals, it's pity it will fall down to if we fail to as a pity we fail to get there. I think what he's trying. I'm not too sure. He's just trying to make out the comment. But yeah, I think right now, just looking at it, of course, Jacko's saying here, mathematically we can make the finals. It'd be very hard to win 6 out of 7 games. Yeah, and I have to echo and agree with what Jacko's saying here, that I think it'll be quite tough for us to get there. Like I just look at it now, like there's been games where we probably could have, we sure really got ourselves the points. And the Dogs game I thought was a good effort. The effort was there. We had a good win against the Bronx at home, albeit they had their Origin players out, and that was a good response to that Titans game. But yeah, it's going to depend on a couple of things. And it is how we do consistently with the performances. Throughout the next couple of weeks, we'll decide whether we make it or not. So I'm not going to say whether we make it or not right now, but I'm just looking for continued improvement right now, and seeing how we go in the next couple of weeks. So that's what I'm getting at right now. And Tahi is just saying, let's just hope we score well over the next couple of games to get a better for and against. So well, we just got to win by 60 or 70 points each week. But realistically, probably not going to happen. But you can only hope there on that one. Jacko's also saying you're not sure about a lot of the leaders. Barney should be captain next year, and James Fisher-Harris would demand effort from the players. So actually, just looking at it, there are positives this season. There have been some positives, and Barney's been one of the massive positives for me. Looking at his consistency and performances. And Jacko's just mentioning here that Barney should be a captain. What do you reckon on that one? Because a lot of people think that Barney could probably be a future Warriors captain. The way he's the way he goes about it on the field, off the field as well. You've got Fisher-Harris coming next year. Do you think that Tohu Harris will remain captain, or do you see the likes of a Barnett, maybe a Fisher-Harris captaining?
Yeah, and I want to talk about just starting with the leader stuff. Like we actually do have a lot. If you think about our team, we've had RTS who's captain us. We've got Sean Johnson. We've got Tohu Harris. We've got what is it? Just left my head. Wade Egan. He's been captain for the squad. Then you have the older blokes of like Cape Wales been part of a lot of teams and been in leadership positions. Then you've got someone like Barney, who's I think he's captain a game this year. So there are actually a lot of players within our squad that have more than most other squads anyway. That show they've been captain or in a leadership position, and I feel they haven't seen it. I'll put it that way. We haven't seen any of it. And then with next year, I think that's one of the decision of captain I've always seen as something that is obviously coaches bestowed on whoever that person is, but it's something that through togetherness, through preseason, we'll see what happens. And I definitely think James Fisher-Harris will definitely command or definitely have a presence in the squad when he gets here. And hopefully the person that gets there is someone that you always want to captain, that people want to get behind. And I think Barnett 100% has been, he's my player of the year at this time right now. He's definitely player of the year for the Warriors. And if he goes captain, why not? One thing I would say though, and not to say it would affect him, but sometimes it's not always been if you're a consistent hard worker, sometimes not being the captain is the right position, because that just puts another thing on your plate that you have to think about as well. So sometimes it's best giving the captaincy to someone that's more or less going to be speaking to the ref, because they don't have to be the one leading the boys. The captain's not always the one that's leading the boys. There's a team, there's a group of players that are leading the boys, and the captain may have to make a final decision if they can't decide on something. But captain is usually the interaction between the ref and post matches and all that. So I feel like we've got a few leaders in our crew. If it's Barney, if it's James Fisher-Harris next year, just hopefully it's someone that the boys want to get behind, and play for not only him but also the rest of the squad.
Yep, and Tahi Bros is saying, is he the right fit? Can he lead the youngsters? And I agree. There's a lot of leadership, Tahi. So that's the big question. Can he lead the likes of the younger players? We know that's the thing. It's an interesting question. I think with Barney, I like the leadership he brings on the field. Although he's not the captain, he definitely shows it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Jazz is just saying he's some same Barney captain. He can hand it, I reckon, and my player of the year. Yeah, and I reckon he is right now. If you look at who's been the best Warriors player this year, if you give the Simon Mannering medal to the player of the year, you got to give it to Mitchell Barnett based on consistency. And what's awesome to see, he's got selected for New South Wales as well. He's been very close. You know, he's been on the edge, just sitting there in the reserves list. But it's good to see him get an opportunity to play for the Blues next week, which all the boosts to him there. But yeah, see Barney captain. Yeah, Michael's suggesting here Egan. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I know he's been captain for us, and a lot of
Yep.
people talk about his, inner leadership, his leadership within the squad. Um,
Mm.
I'm neither here or there with who becomes captain, because I think that's I don't want to say it's a spiritual, momental thing, but it's like that thing happens in the trenches that we don't get to see, and someone emerges as like, yo, that's the player that we put as the person. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be the best player, but it has to be someone that the boys are keen to get
Mm.
behind, and also know that whatever decision can't be made, we trust that dude to be making that decision on the field for us. So yeah, well, I personally think let that moment take itself, and I'm sure we'll get a good captain. I would say with the Barney thing, whether he can lead the youngsters, what gives me hope is when he got announced to be a part of New South Wales team back, I think before game one, you saw all the players get behind him, both young and old. So I think he's got a lot of respect there in the squad. Obviously for the way he's playing, but they were also proud of him for making it there. So I feel like he could lead the team. But again, we'll let the spiritual moment happen through preseason, and we'll see who
Yeah,
emerges as the captain next year.
yeah, and I'm sure we'll worry about that once next season comes along in the off season. Had hello to Tarns as well. Good to see you in the chat. Kia ora, Tarns. Hope you're doing well yourself there. So good to see you in the chat there. But just I want to have a look at to the player ratings now. So some of the players that have so far this season, just look at them and give a rating out of 10 and give your honest thoughts. What do you think about the players so far this year? So I'll start off with Adam Pompey. So Adam Pompey's he's had just read some of the stats as well, so guys get an indication. So 11 appearances this year. He's had 11 appearances. So 2 tries, 23 goals, goal conversion rate 76.7%. So got a handy sort of backup option there in terms of a kicker there. Try assist 1, tackle breaks 24, line breaks 2, tackles made 117. Tackle efficiency 90% tackle efficiency, missed tackles 13, average running meters 89, total running meters 983. So if you look at Adam Pompey's season to date so far, what are your thoughts on him? Because at the start of the season we didn't see a lot of him, and then we sort of start to see a few more games where you strung a few more games together. So what do you make out of Pomps there?
Yeah, so I think personally he's had an all right year. Obviously
Yeah.
he's had to like, one of those people that had to wait a New South Wales Cup to get his moment, and I definitely think when he came on, he didn't do too many spectacular things. I think he
Mm.
showed he's actually capable here, especially I'll say attack he looks capable. And then there was a couple of games, definitely the Melbourne game, he got exposed defensively.
Yeah.
Just making the wrong reads, people going through. There was even I can't remember the game where we had 12 players. I can't remember what game that was, but he got again we had 12 players, so he got run around with 12. But I mean, like, there's just been some defensive efforts that they've been questionable for me. But I wouldn't say he's had a bad run being in there in our squad. I think he's been all right. I think bonus is his kicking. He actually
Yep.
relieves someone like Sean Johnson of the kicking, or others that of that, just because he can do that. So that's a plus for him. But also, I wouldn't say there's been this X factor with, this guy we have to keep forever there. I think he's just basically, as long as he continues to perform, as long as he continues to get his assignments right, especially defensively, why shift him? So yeah, is
Yeah.
he like? Long story short, I don't like. Is
Yeah.
he on my list of centers as number one? Of course not, but I don't
Mm.
think he's had a bad season, so I don't know why we would remove him unless
Yeah.
there was something that the coaches saw differently during the week, during training or something.
Yeah, if you're rating him this season, what sort of rating would you give him out of 10?
So out of 10, I'll give him about a 6.
Yep.
And again, that sounds a little bit harsh in some sense,
Yeah.
but I just think again, like I said, nothing really X factor. Plus side he can kick, but he's been at least standard. So I think for someone that's been standard, been quite
Yep.
consistent in sense of like just being there and doing his role, that should always be above a 5. But whether that's been oh this he did something crazy every week that we're just rapped about, hasn't been. But he runs some good front doors. Like I say there, he runs some good front doors, and he's got a few tries through that too. But yeah, 6.
Yeah. So Tahi Bro's just saying here, struggling with the high balls. Yeah, he tends to do that. And we saw that with that game against the Storm at home.
Yeah.
Where Katoa jumped up and he grabbed the high ball off Pompey there. Pompey didn't take it, so yeah, he definitely does have those moments. But I think he's also been, I think he's been good in patches, and he's also had some games where he's not been good. But other than that, I think if you put him in the centres, if you have like an RTS or a Pompey, you're going to put. I think personally, you're going to put Pompey in the centres over RTS. But that's my general opinion on it. And I'm also a massive Rocco Berry fan. I always harped on about it. Said that look, if Rocco Berry was playing, he'd be in my 17. I'd start him.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I think Pompey's been good. He's had games where he's been, solid, and he's also had games where he's, bit off. But like, I'll probably give him a solid 6.5. Yeah, I mean, I think he's been not too bad for me. He's, but for majority of the games, obviously, he featured in the Rabbitohs game in round 5. There was a game where he came off the bench as well, which I found. I don't know what your thoughts on this one. I found it quite odd that they played him on the bench. We put him on the bench for a few games,
Yeah.
which I don't necessarily agree with. At the time, I thought that if you're going to play him, either start him or not have him in the team. So yeah, what are your thoughts there on that?
Oh yeah, that was confusing. Yeah, you just reminded me,
Yeah,
like when you had those 3 minutes games and
yeah,
he's like coming off the bench. I'm like, again, we've seen a lot more teams kind of eject back on the bench and put him 17. And I
yep,
I don't know if I'm right with this, but I think that's personally because the game's a bit more sped up. We're getting these
yep,
6 again, so having it back to not only cover injury but also kind of inject himself can help. But you're not doing anything with 3 minutes, and I felt like a lot of those games where he was on the bench. I don't know how many he had. I'm sure it was at least 2, maybe more than that. Just felt like it was just a waste of a person on the bench. And again, this is kind of the experimental questioning of some of the decisions around the bench this year, is because I feel like it hasn't. It feels like they're trying stuff, didn't work, and they try again next week and did the same exact thing. It felt like, and still didn't do anything different with it. So, yeah, for me, him coming off the bench probably didn't help in terms of his own game, but I thought, yeah, he deserves a 6 for this year. I would say with the high balls, go with the Storm one, and also last week with the
yeah.
Bulldogs, he actually had the Storm one, but turned off, not
It came
realizing
off.
that
Yeah,
101 strip could probably happen right there. And
yeah,
then the last one with kick out, I think that actually was our
mm,
blockers. The blockers didn't block out. I think it was Timighty at the time, and he was too far from it. Kick out just jumped into that. So I don't want to excuse him too much, but
yeah.
I think relatively he's had an all right season given the situation he's been put in.
Yep. And Chance CNK. So appearances this season he had 12. So 4 tries assists, 46 tackle breaks, 7 line breaks, 72 tackles made, tackle efficiency 78.3%. Missed tackles 20, average running meters 201, total running meters 2,414. So what are you, if you look at that CNK, obviously he's now going to miss a couple more games now. For the rest of the season. So what do you make out of those 12 appearances he's had?
Yeah, mixed season, right? Didn't start with
Yeah,
us this year. And then he's had a game at playing at 6, which we
yep,
won. but
Yeah.
obviously a first time ever playing there, especially at NRL.
Mm.
Mixed season for him, even just with his own efforts. We're so used to him, and him and RTS so many meters, per game, and I don't think it's been a lot of. He's had a lot of games like that, but there's also been a few games where I don't even think he's barely cracked 100. So mixed season, definitely injuries have played a lot into that this year. I personally still think he's first choice fullback. I think people, obviously we've got Tane and then we've got also Roger. And I think what Chance provides at the back is similar to what Dylan Edwards provides at the Penrith at the Panthers. There's a stability there when he's able to, when he's healthy and he's there. He's good on the kick returns. He's quite safe when it comes to any high balls. And if he gets a chance to execute their last option or the backdoor options, he's relatively good. But I think there's just been injuries, a few changes to the lineup that he hasn't had the best season like last year. It was an amazing season. This year, I'd say definitely a step back from that.
Yeah, and what do you give a rating out of 10? I'll probably say around about a 7-ish. He had a good year
Yep.
last year. I think 7 probably. Well, from what I've seen, I've probably given him a 7.
Yeah, 7 for me too. I've actually written some of these down, so yeah, I had him at 7 as well.
Awesome. And now to Darlin Watini-Zelezniak, DWZ. So he's had 15 appearances this year, and he's had 9 tries, 2 try assists, 52 tackle breaks, 10 line breaks. Tackles made 93, missed tackles 22, tackle efficiency 80.9, average running meters 145, total running meters 2,183. So what are your takes out of DWZ? Because last year Dullin was on fire. He was on fire. He was right up there with the try scorers list in the NRL. Maybe this
Yeah,
year has been a little bit more. He's been good, but he's also been probably not as high as he was last year. Well, what do you foresee on Dullin?
yeah. I think it's been again a mixed
Bit of a
season,
mix.
and probably more mixed than other players.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few players actually in this bracket of mix, but yeah, I think like for me, like besides the tries, we love to see Dalen jump in the corner and do what he does. I think really his
Yeah.
question's been on the defensive side. There's just been so many times where he's either not trusted as centre and come in, or he's stayed out and have not helped, create any type of safety for the centre or for anything that's coming away to that side. So for me, yeah, it's been not the best season for Dalen personally. I personally gave him a 5 for the season. I think it's
Yeah.
been way too inconsistent for what we're used to of him. And I'm not going that just off stats. I just think, there's just been some games, especially like a lot of those defensive reads have happened really early in the game. So, like by early, I mean like that 20 to 30 minute mark when we start falling over. And it's because of those reads, whether it be through him or some of the centers. But yeah, so I gave him a 5.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And just actually having a look at the chat, I saw Tarns give a rating. Where is it here? Oh, yeah. So I've got it on the screen here. She's saying here that I'll probably give Dallin a 6. She's saying a 6 here for DWZ, and I'll probably say, yeah, I'll probably give him around a 6. A 6 out of 10 for me. Obviously, if you looked at it last year, you'd probably say Dallin would get around about an 8 or a 9 because he was right up there last year. But he's had a bit of a mixed bag this season, no doubt about it. I think for me, but Tahi's is saying yeah, we lost Mets. Then I think it took a few games before the attack became relevant, as his attack was easy to read. Yeah, it was. It was definitely like too predictable. We can talk. I talked about that quite a lot. And yeah, what are your thoughts here on this one? Tahi's is saying here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
As we've talked before around the predictability in our
yeah,
backline, and I think a lot of teams are just better at defending the edge stuff these days. But again, even if you know the play, it's execution, and I think a big part of it is that we weren't hitting it at pace. And you see
yeah,
when Walker injected himself. I think that created a flow-on effect with it getting to our backs. And we look at last week when we just executed a simple play off the scrum, was just hands. Just we created extra overlap with at the scrum, and just was hands after that. So again, I think attack. He's been not as crazy as last year, but I definitely think it's been okay. But for me, it's the defensive side that's where a lot of my questions are.
Yep, and Marcelo Montoya. So he's had 16 appearances this year. So a lot of our players have just looked at it that the appearances are quite low, right? Because we've had some injuries as well, and some players have either been suspended or injured. So there's some of these appearances, they haven't quite appeared for every single game. There's a few that's been light on appearances. So Montoya's appeared with the most, quite the most. He's right up there, 16 appearances. Obviously, he had that one game where he was dropped. I think it was after the Broncos game. I'm pretty sure it was. Oh, not Broncos game. It was after Magic Round. I'm pretty sure it was after Magic Round he got dropped. But yeah, he had six tries, 1 try assist, and 54 tackle breaks, 8 line breaks, 65 tackles made. Tackle efficiency is 76.5%. Missed tackles is 20. It's quite a bit there with regards to these missed tackles. Average running meter is 130. Total running meter is 2,088. So, what do you think here with Marcelo here? I think the biggest thing that I question is his defence. He's a bit same with Dallin. Obviously, you mentioned Dallin there with his defence this season. Our wingers are getting a lot caught out, and if Montoya's been up there with some of the tackles. So, what are your thoughts here on how Marcelo's been going this season?
Yeah, very up and down because one tackle he didn't miss was in the weekend. He lined up Connor Tracy and got him.
Yeah.
But yeah, defensively just being rather poor, and specifically to the kick defusals, he's dropped so many. Well, I don't want to say so many, but he's dropped a few balls where I think been critical moments for us as well. But one thing that's good about Montoya is those early runs. So he's going to take it up. Whether it be the first or second ball, and get a good couple of meters out of him. So he's good for that for sure. But yeah, defensively just been missing, and kind of wondered sometimes why he's still there. But again, this has been the whole consistency of picking the same players that Webby and that have been trying to do, and it doesn't seem like a bad bloke. I just don't think the performance has been there. However, the last game or two, there's been a shining light. He's actually shown a bit more, I guess, consistency in his performance. But as a whole, I've questioned why he's been out there personally. So I gave him a 4, just based on his overall season.
Yeah, Tarns is just saying here, just defensively, he's a liability. So yeah, it is, and I did question that last year with him, and during the finals he got caught out quite a few times, especially against the Broncos and in week 1 of the finals, and the Penrith game as well. He got caught out quite a few times, and it's just still a bit of an issue there. But yeah, look, I'll probably give him a 5. Probably just the lowest rating that I think for me. But Rocco Berry, so Rocco Berry had 12 appearances this year. Just try and get through this scroll quicker. So 4 tries, 2 try assists, 20 tackle breaks, 3 line breaks. So 242 tackles made, 23 missed tackles, 91.3% tackle efficiency. Average running meters of 76, total running meters of 918. So I love Rocco. I absolutely love him. I think he's a really talented player. He's right up there. I think he was right up there as well as one-on-one tackles in the NRL. And I think his kick chase. You talk about his kick chase. It's quite no one talks about it quite a lot, but he's right up there. So what are your thoughts here on Rocco? And it was a shame seeing him get injured. Real shame. I don't know when he'll be back. I don't know what sort of date the club's planning on having him back on the field. But What are your thoughts on Rocco, based on those just those 12 appearances he's made?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, start of the season, we were like, wow,
Yeah.
Rocco's the man. And he's, I think it's, we've been waiting to see this part of Rocco, especially attack. Like we saw a little bit of it at the end of last year, but I think we saw a lot of it,
Yeah.
especially at the start of the season. Um, there was a rough patch there, if I remember correctly. It was the Titans game at home where he got he it was I think it was Brian Kelly actually beat him a couple times, and just kind of fell off tackles, which wasn't the Rocco we were used to for especially for
Yeah.
the start of the year. So it's a bit of a rough
Mm-hmm.
patch there. Um, but in terms of I think he's been the main beneficiary of the predictable game plan of that bomb to the right because he's obviously
Mm.
been the leading center to shut that down and keep them down there. So I think if we had counted a lot of those tackles, I honestly feel like
Yeah.
a lot of it came from that.
Mm.
But yeah, like I think he showed he can be a really great center and definitely a center for the future. I think what's interesting is that he plays right side. I feel like we're starting to unlock Roger on the right side. So it's going to be very
Yeah.
interesting if he does come back from injury, what the coaching
Oh.
does, because that's a bit of a dilemma.
Yeah. And what would a rating you'd give out of 10 there? Because I'll give him a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I give him a 6.5.
Yep.
I think he's actually done really well, but I feel that those rough patches and
Yeah.
obviously getting injured, so he's been out for a few games now, probably brought his score down. But I like what we see of him. Just hopefully we can see him healthy, consistent, and yeah, and yeah. Good luck to the coaching deciding who goes right center when he's back.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's going to be a tough decision to make. And Tahi Bros is saying here, yeah, Ty Artis on his natural side. Yeah, he is playing a lot better on that side too. We have seen glimpses of it now. Especially last week against the Dogs. Thought he was really good there. Tans is also saying the squad speaks very highly of him too. So talks about Rocco. Yeah, they absolutely love him, and I absolutely love him too. He's one of my favourite players. So that's why I talk about him quite highly. I am a little bit biased, so yeah, I love Rocco. Yeah, but yeah, he's been good. He's been good when he's played. So he's had some great games, and we saw glimpses of that last year when he came back into the first grade side, and we saw that with New Zealand A as well against Tonga. He had a great game there as well. So yeah, hopefully he can stay fully fit and get back on the field real soon. RTS. Speaking of RTS, we talked about him quite a bit in the stream as well. And Roger too have asked us, Shet, what your thoughts here? So I'll just read out his stats. So his appearances 12. He had 12 appearances this year with 3 tries, 2 try assists, 55 tackle breaks. So his stats still read quite well there. Four line breaks, 122 tackles made, 83% tackle efficiency, missed tackles 25. Average running meters 178 and total running meters of 2,138 there. So, what are your thoughts on RTS?
Yeah, like I've said previously in this conversation,
Yeah.
I actually think he's done better than most fans have put out against him.
Mm.
Just going off, like if you just purely look at stats and you look at other centre stats attacking, he's around. I wouldn't say he's top, but
Yeah.
definitely around there, kind of looking the same. It's his defense, and I feel again, like I said before, that's something that's hard to pick up straight away. And he's been away from the game, obviously with rugby, and then coming back to play league and trying to read. You just read some of those stats. It shows, he's been missing his assignment a couple of times defensively. But however, I feel like last week I felt we saw a better version of him. I felt we got to Mighty Martin unlocking a Roger, and even on defensively, I didn't see Bronson Cherry get through him. Bronson Cherry got a try, but that was off, a mistake, and he, intercept by Burden and on the way they went. But I think RTS has been doing relatively okay by a standard, but we're used to seeing electric RTS fullback
Mm.
running through teams RTS, which obviously I don't think he's lived up to as well. So for me, I gave him a 5.5. I think he's been at least standard.
Yeah.
Um, but I still think there's a lot more of his game we haven't seen, but we saw glimpses of that last week. So I'm praying and hoping that we get to see more of it. But again, Barry comes back there. Will they take him away from his natural side? I don't know.
Yeah, and I just pop into the chat here. So Mickey says, "Night peeps, got to go." Cheers, Mickey. Appreciate you watching and commenting. Michael's also saying here, "Oh, RTS outside Rocco," and Ryan is also saying here, he's done well, but you can just tell that RTS hasn't been unlocked at centre. They don't get enough carries these days, in my opinion. So that's what he reckons. And yeah, I'm probably going to give RTS here a 5 out of 10. But look, I mean, obviously it's not easy. He's learning that position, and yeah, it's not quite clicked into gear, unfortunately for him this year. In terms of this team, yes, he's doing quite well in the stats, but it's quite in terms of performances on the field. It's not been there in terms of the being a centre. You've obviously got to have that consistency, which he hasn't quite found. Yeah, it would be good if RTS could be locked into one spot. Yeah, exactly. Obviously,
Yeah.
we've seen him play a bit of wing. We've seen him play a bit of centre as well. So it's obviously hasn't helped. He hasn't quite found that role, that centre role, his own yet. But it comes with the learnings, of course. It comes with the learnings of playing a different position.
Mm-hmm.
Shanaris Tavita. So Shanaris Tavita, he had 11 appearances this season. So 4 tries, 2 goals, 2 forced dropouts, goal conversion rate 100%, average kicking meters 132.3, 1 try assist, 1 line break assist, 2 offloads, 148 tackles made, tackle efficiency of 91.4%, average running meters 34, total running meters of 377 meters. So Chanel hasn't had a consistent running in one position this year. I think for me, obviously, we've seen at the start of the year he hasn't quite been able to get into that first grade side regularly throughout the weeks. Obviously now with injuries, has now put him in a position where he can get a run at that run in the halves. So, what do you make of CHT? Just out of those 11 appearances, I think he's been pretty good. What are your thoughts here on how he's been going?
Yeah, I think he's actually been relatively stable, considering the time he's gotten coming off the bench, or whether that's starting at halves in the last couple of weeks. I like he's rightfully so had to kind of wait his time in New South Wales Cup, given that he's just come back into the fold. But again, how fortunate are we to have someone like him there to kind of replace, and I think he's been doing really well this year. So for me, I personally think what is it? His best asset for the team has been his defense, but I feel the attack. He's scored a couple of tries. He's done a few. It's not like he's been missing on anywhere. I just feel like he's again only 11 appearances. He's been Mr. Fix It, and I feel like he has. I think when we got beaten by the Titans, he got put in the middle, and probably would like to have that time back because he got beaten a couple of times in that middle. That led to tries. But defensively, like what I've liked about Te Maire Martin and CHT at halves is that defensively, like they're quite strong. Now, I'm meaning that in the first hit-ups where I think one of the struggles we've had, people want to point to Sean Johnson's attack, rightfully so. There's been a few execution errors, but actually his challenge has been defensively. I feel like every time I've watched Sean Johnson, most times he misses the upfront contact on the first tackles, so he's getting like a little bit bumped off, and then other people are coming in to kind of protect and save him a little bit, and that's kind of creating a roll on for the opposition. Where if you watch Chanel and Te Maire Martin there, man, they throw some in, and we know Chanel can hit. He can throw in a hit now and then and put people on their backside. So for me, this kind of seem harsh, but it's it's not. It's just because he's had limited time, and the games he has played, he's not really started. So I gave him a 5, not really based on performance, but just because we've only seen so many games of him actually start and get some decent time. But during those time, he's been relatively well. So 5, just for where he's at. I definitely can see that going to 7 to 8 if he stays in his position and gets a bit more game time going to the end of the year.
Yeah, that's understandable. That's fair enough. I'll probably go something completely different to you there. I'll probably say a 6. I would have given him a 7. I was very close to giving him a 7, but obviously maybe a bit more game time. Maybe would probably chuck up that rating a bit higher. So yeah, if he was given more game time, we'll probably see a lot more of him, potential of him on the field. So yeah, but he's been good. Like when he's come into the side, he's been putting in some good performances. And it's not easy because he's not getting, he's not getting that consistent time on the field. So yeah, I'll give him a 6 for me for that one. And Michael's saying here that CHT is a champion. He puts his body on line and a true warrior. Yeah, he's definitely very good defensively. He's really good defensively, as you can see with his stats here. And tackle efficiency, 91.4% is very good for a half as well. Someone who's playing the halves. And Tarns is saying she's given him a 7 as well. Tarns is actually surprised by your rating. Yeah, and she said a 5. Wow, she's really surprised by that one.
And again, the reason why it's 5 is because it's just game time. Like he's played mostly off the bench and had minimum, but when he's played, he's been well. So if he starts all these next games, continues to play the way he is, he's easily a 7 or 8. But not to say it for him, but there's a reason why a lot of my scores are low this year because look where we are on the ladder. There's only 1 9, and we all know which one that is.
Oh yeah, and we'll definitely get to that one real soon. But yeah, look, it's understandable. It's probably fair enough too. But Tamari Martin. So Tamari Martin had 13 appearances this year. He's ended 4 tries, 7 dropouts, average kicking meters of 166.4, try assist 12, line break assist 11, offloads 5, 245 tackles made, tackle efficiency of 87.2%, average range meters of 75, total range meters of 978. So, so what do you reckon here with Tamari Martin, TMM here? What are your thoughts just on how he's been going this season?
Yeah, I think he's shown another side, or I don't know if it's shown another side, but he's played really well. In my books, I think last week was probably one of his, I guess, worst games, if you wanted to call it that way. I think offensively, some of his last options weren't on, especially kicking, because what he did against the Broncos was amazing. And again, we're versing the Bulldogs who are better defensively, so he might not have had a lot of time and ability to kind of do what he did in the Broncos game. But just in terms of structure, like I personally didn't have him looking better than Sean Johnson did this year. Like I didn't see it. I thought Timothy Martin, after his injury last year, yes, he had an injury, but he kind of just looked, he just looked like he was filling numbers sometimes personally, where this year I've been really amazed by his game. And some of those games where he's just purely led and being the dominant half. He's had heaps of try assists. Our attack looks like it's thriving. Everything's going for it. So for me, I've given Timadi 8 based off that. He's actually been again, like we see with this, because one player plays bad doesn't mean the reason why we lose. And I also don't think because one player plays good, the reason why we win. But he's heavily contributed to the wins and heavily contributed to kind of the change we've seen. And many of us are calling for him to stay there. So yeah, I'm giving him an 8, and I think it's a deserving 8.
Yeah, and just looking at the comments, and Tarns is just saying here, I love Tamari Martin. Yeah, he had a bad game on Saturday, but he isn't that. Our first loss with him at 7. Yeah, and look, he's been really strong at 7. I think when you look at it, like when his best position is and where it is in the halves, I think 7 is probably his best position. But the thing is, you've got SJ as well. And also you got Metcalf. So he's got competition, right, for that spot, for the halves there. And Tahi's also saying here, once the trust issues were dropped, he got good ball, and the boys showed his ability. And yeah, well, I've actually been pretty critical of Tamari Martin and in his performances and his consistency. But when he came back into the side, and Sean once he played in that position, when they moved him to halfback, he took more of a responsibility and more of an ownership, and he played a lot better. He's played a lot better. So, I've got to give credit to Tamari for that, because I was actually pretty critical of him, I'm not going to lie. But I'm happy to be proven wrong, and he's putting that consistency in his performances. So, yeah, and Tarns is saying he's been a lifesaver for us, in my opinion. Yeah, he has been. He's definitely showed that that role, that leadership. He showed leadership, and he's come out there and performed. When we've had injuries, when we've had players out, especially, and he's taken on that role very well, I think, for me. But yeah, look, I've got to give him an 8. Yeah, I've got to give him an 8 here. And I don't think at the start of the season, if I looked at it, that he would probably be a lot of more, starting a lot more of our games in the halves. So I was very high on Luke Metcalf and Sean Johnson being a halves, and then Luke got injured. So I didn't think Tamari would get a lot of, games. And here it is now, and he's been very strong. So yeah, I'll give him an 8. 8 for me. 8 out of 10 there. And Tahi's just saying here, yeah, I felt that Sean Johnson and Egan were starving him off the ball. So yeah, what are your thoughts quickly on that one?
Yeah, and I would say rightfully so. Given the year that they had last year, Sean Johnson is our, would have been our preferred dominant half, and most halves would have 75 to 80% of their ball, with the 6 kind of getting 20%. And you kind of have to be efficient. So with the little ball you get, you have to do something with it. And I think what's actually helped Te Maire Martin's game is because he's had more ball, so he hasn't had to be as efficient every time he's gotten it. He's able to actually make a few mistakes, but also actually, pull some things off, and he has. So I think it was just about getting that balance right of him having a bit more ball to play with. Obviously, SJ out, so he became the dominant half. And then I think when he came back, they actually could have worked it out. I tried to do the numbers on it. I think it was slightly more Johnson, but it was like 55, 45%. So if I felt like it was just the execution when they were on, that didn't kind of work in, but it shows that once Te Maire Martin has a bit more ball, he actually can do some wonders with it. And yeah, he's been amazing this year.
Yep. And Ryan's just saying, I still think the Warriors at best have Sean Johnson 7 and Metcalf at 6, but injuries have derailed that. Yeah, well, that was my halves combination when I put my team out at the start of the season, when I went through my predicted Warriors team, best Warriors team, and I had Metcalf and Johnson as my halves. Some people would have had Te Maire Martin in there. I think Te Maire Martin last year started in the halves with Sean Johnson, from my memory, as well. And then, of course, he had that injury at the back end of the season. And then we saw Metcalf in there, and then Metcalf suddenly got an injury as well. So it was like it's like this year, right? So it feels like something similar. We haven't had a real consistent pairing in the halves there. So yeah, Tarns is just saying here, Webby reckons that Te Maire Martin could be a starting 7 moving forward. It all depends. It all depends on how the club feels. There could be other clubs out there that might try and get Te Maire Martin, because they might see if he's not playing first grade, he might, they might check some interest from other NRL clubs, and I'm sure there might be a possibility of that, happening. Could happen, but hopefully he stays at the Warriors. I do hope he stays at the Warriors the next couple of years. Obviously with Sean retiring as well, we've got Metcalf. We've also got young Luke Hanson as well, coming through, playing that New South Wales Cup side as well. So got a few. Oh, and also Jet Cleary. Don't forget, Jet Cleary's there. So we've got some options. We definitely got some options there as well there with that one. But moving on to Sean Johnson. So just Sean Johnson here. So 12 appearances, 4 tries, 22 goals, 10 forced dropouts, 88% goal conversion rate, average kicking meters, 508.9, try assist 9, line break assist 10, offloads 5, tackles made 229, tackle efficiency 82.1%, average running meters 75, total running meters of 911 there for SJ. Look, quite honest here, I think it's been a pretty tough season for SJ, and it's not quite been the season that he probably would have hoped. He probably would have admitted. I think he probably would admit that it's not been his season to date. There's been a lot of critics. Sean's had his critics this year. There's a lot of people been pretty critical of him, and yes, his performances haven't been great at all. But like I said earlier, it's not the reason why we've lost all our games this year. He's not the only one, not playing well. So,
Mhm.
what do you make of SJ? And I absolutely love Sean Johnson. Massive fan of him. He obviously cut him close to winning the Dally M last year, but this year hasn't quite gone to plan. So, what are your thoughts on him?
Oh yeah. Um, I think a lot of fans and have been critical of him, and rightfully so with his performance. I've
Yeah.
said this on our one, but a lot of this is directed to his performance, not him as a person.
Mm,
Because I feel like a lot of it's it got gnarly for a bit there, right, where people were
yeah.
getting at him for
Over the
so
top.
many crazy reasons. Yeah, way over the top. Um, but he hasn't been performing well in to his ability, especially what we saw last year. And I think for me, if I had to get down to some specifics, so I said one of them, which
Yeah.
was the early contact and defense. Like there's been so many times he's missed that first assignment when they've run at him. And again, I feel like our positions are realized and they keep targeting him, but they got on the front foot every time they ran at him. Whether he got bumped off, whether other people had to come in or other players had to come in and help him out.
Mm,
Yeah, that was a concern. Obviously, the predictability with the game plan.
yep.
Now that I said that CHT and Timothy Martin said that we gave them opportunity to play what's in front of them. I kind of wonder if he only resorted to those kicks just because he felt like play it safe, and I feel like that's what we're seeing a lot from him this year. It's just playing a bit more safe. Again, yes, he is older, so I don't want that to be an excuse, but that does probably play into obviously the injuries and a few things that are just not going right for him because father time gets everyone. But I think at the end of the day, it's largely from the stories we've been hearing, he hasn't been able to play with the boys, train with the boys because of his injuries. They're trying to monitor him, and I think that's what we're seeing. It's the execution. There's been many games, especially when you got rushed back like the typical backdoor ball was going behind players,
Yeah.
which wasn't what we were seeing last year. So I feel like part of it's been injuries, part of it's been keeping him out to monitor him, but also that's affected chemistry when it got to getting out there. And then we just saw that kind of play out on the field. So yeah, mixed season for him. I'm sure he would. I don't know if he would want it again. Maybe he wants this to show that everyone that he can become, he could be a great player even with all this adversity. But yeah, definitely not a good year. And I gave him a 4 for this year, or 4 so far anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a tough season for Sean. So yeah, I'll probably have to give him around about that rate. A four for me. And just a comment here actually from Tahi. Just saying here, where was it? Let's get up on the screen. So does it confirm Sean Johnson's retirement? So do you think this might be his last year, or do you see him hanging around another year? Because um, there's a big question mark around it. I know the club apparently did offer him a contract. I think there was a talk. That was a couple of months ago. There was talk around it. I'm not too sure whether that was the case or not, but there's some rumours going around. What do you think this may be his last year, or do we see him hanging around one more year or 2 years?
Um, yeah, I think it's on him
Yeah,
really. I
yeah,
think I personally think it's if anything that's going to retire him will be medically injured that would
mm,
retire him. I actually think the ability is still there. Like he can still kick the ball long, he can still pass the ball long. It's just not getting there. So for me, that shows that there's a potential lack of focus. There might be a confidence thing. There might be, you know, I'm still thinking about my injury when I'm out there. I don't know. There's a whole lot of things that it could be, but it's just not getting to where it's going. But he can still pass it that long. He can still kick it that long. So for me, it's
yes,
a potential confidence thing, potentially getting into, presence of mind when he's out there. So I wouldn't see why he would need to retire unless, it was medical injury, that he was forced to retire. Is kind of where I'm at the moment.
yeah. Ty's just saying, yeah, I want him at Vegas with a full team opportunities. Tarns is saying here, does anyone know if he's fully trained with the squad now? I'm not too sure whether she's meaning there. I think she might mean Luke Metcalf. No, I'm not aware of whether he's back at training yet, or I'm not. I haven't heard or seen anything. Hello to Jose in the chat. Good to see you, bro. Hope you're doing well. Ryan's saying I think we've relied way too much on SJ and set plays when Sean Johnson has been playing, and with Sean Johnson playing injured, has resulted in him having a bad year. Yeah, that's I have to agree on that one. Wade Egan, so just try and get through these as quickly as I can here. So Wade Egan's 14 appearances, 4 try assists, 7 line break assists, 5 offloads, 517 tackles, tackle efficiency of 92%, average running meters of 52, and total running meters of 741 meters. Well, what are your thoughts here on Wade? Because I thought he had a strong start to this season. I think we were all one stage Warriors fans, and myself, were talking about him playing Origin for New South Wales. But since then, it's sort of maybe tailed off a bit. His form hasn't quite been the heights of what it was at the start of the season. Do you agree, or do you have a different view on what you've seen of Wade?
Yeah, no, very similar view. Yeah, a lot of us are calling him to potentially be in Origin. At the start of the year, we've seen moments in the last few games that he's been there where he's shown that too. I honestly think like one of the things with him is like, I don't know about you guys out there, but I get scared when he goes for the front on tackles because I'm like, I don't know if he's going to get concussed again. I feel like that's one of the challenges for him because obviously I'm talking here into injury and stuff like that. But I'm like also talking into longevity. Like I feel like the bro needs to wear a headgear. Again, a headgear is probably not going to save all those bumps in a tackle, but I just feel like or change the tackle technique somehow because I feel his probably him getting concussed and all that kind of happening kind of leads to us breaking down too because we have to put in someone else there, and obviously that's why you have a hooker on the bench, someone like Lasek or someone else to kind of fill their role. But I feel like that's added a little bit of stress to the consistency and chemistry that can be built with the spine and the team. So I think he's had a relatively okay year, but he's been a bit more quiet. But it's when he's able to get out there and run and be able to use that, be able to kind of get the defense guessing. It's amazing, And I've been hypercritical of him over the years. It's like I don't ever see him run, but when he started running, especially at the end of last year and this year, I'm like, oh man, like watch out, other teams, bro. We got a running hooker that can pass left, right. He's not even looking. He's passing it the other way, and then he's just gone quiet through a few games, and obviously then potentially concussed in a few games as well. So, in terms of a score, I gave him a 6 for him this year. I think he's been he's shown he can be one of the best hookers in the game, and probably through this middle stretch we haven't seen he's done some wonderful things, but just quiet in comparison to some other players in the team.
Yeah, and Tahi's just saying here that he's not 80 minutes anymore, which I think it's fair. I think it's a fair comment because maybe he can't get through those full 80 minutes because he's always had a knock or two, and I think that's the thing I've been concerned with Egan over the years. He really puts his body on the line. He's very good defensively. I know some people weren't fans of Egan at the start, but he's had his critics. But I've always been a fan of him since we signed him. I know some people like to harp on whether he runs the ball a lot, doesn't run the ball a lot, but he has shown signs of that now over the past couple of years. So yeah, look, I think he's been good enough this season. I'll probably give him a 6 there. Just six for me. I think he's really solid. And Tans is also saying I've never rated Lussick, which we'll get on to Lussick next. We'll talk about Lussick. She's saying here that I've never rated Lussick, but last couple of games he's been on. He's good to see him take more runs. And Tans is saying here Egan a 6. She's given Egan a 6 here. Yeah, it's a job to tackle your butts off. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what he brings to the table. Egan brings plenty to our attack, and like I feel like when he's not playing, we tend to struggle. We're not on the field. But that's just my general thoughts on Wade, and I love Wade Egan. He's very underrated. I think he's a really underrated player and what he brings to the table, especially for the side. But Freddie Lussick. So Freddie Lussick, he's only had 8 appearances this year, so not too many games. But on that basis, he's had 1 try, 195 tackles made, 92% tackle efficiency. So his defense is pretty good there with average running meters of 20, total running meters of 163. So just on those eight appearances, what do you take out of Freddie Lussick? What are your general thoughts on him there?
Yeah, he's got a mean runawave,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's a tough bloke. He
yeah.
he looks like a type of kid that wants to just rip in anytime he can, and he I think he's been caught out a few times offensively, but he's keen to get in the rough of things, which I like about him. I think where he's kind of still growing as a player is on attack, and his delivery of the ball ain't bad, but that's
Yeah.
kind of where Egan really thrives. Like the way Egan can put that like where you need to be, like especially like end of last year and the start of this year, like if where any player wanted that ball, he'll put it right in front of you. And I think Lussick doesn't really have a running doesn't have a running game, and also like doesn't just not as creative and not as pinpoint um, as a hooker needs to be. So he hasn't been, necessarily bad this year because I feel like the last couple of games he's really kind of stepped up. But still, I was lacking a bit of creativity from my personal liking. But I do love that he
Yeah.
tries in defense. So I gave him a 4.5. That's because he's basically been backup. He hasn't really got game time.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's been decent. He could definitely grow if he keeps playing like the way he does. But yeah, 4.5 for the season.
Yeah, I'll probably give him at least a 5.5 there, out of 10 there for me. And just on Lussick quickly, Jose is saying here that Lussick continues to improve. He's become more reliable in the money wave of the season so far. So yeah, that was. As for Adam Fanua Blake now, so AFB, 16 appearances, so 6 tries, 59 tackle breaks, post contact meters 1,156.7, average hit ups 14.2, offloads 13, tackles made 409, tackle efficiency 95.8%, average running meters 173, and total running meters of 2,782. So Adam Fanua Blake, AFB. So what do you make out of this whole season or so far for AFB? Because at the start of the season, there was would be for me and some other people, will there be any doubts on his commitment to the team because of just signing with the Sharks for the next couple of years. He's obviously had that game where he was dropped. So what do you make out of AFB here? What are your thoughts? Like his performances on the field. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, like very. Yeah, he's another player in the mixed bag, and mixed bag because it's not like when he's being AFB like best prop in the game, but
Yeah,
with some of the off-field stuff that's happened preseason, as well as some of those incidents that happen in season, um, it does really kind of paint the picture that is he actually in it? And again, I could never know because I'm not there
yeah,
24/7, but just some of those questions around his commitment, I feel like have also affected the way he's played too. So in terms of him and what I was expecting from him, he hasn't been up there, but he's been relatively he's been obviously besides Barnett, like he's still been doing relatively well in terms of his runs. He still pulled out a few of his shrug tries here earlier the season.
yeah.
So yeah, I I I had him playing a lot better this year.
Mm.
Hasn't lived up to that, but he hasn't been our worst prop of our roster by any
Mm.
means. So I gave him a 6.5 for the season.
Yeah, I probably give him a. Actually, I'll give him a 7. Yeah, I'll give him a 7 here. But Tarns is saying here that I think he's dropped off a little bit. She reckons he's dropped off. Um, Michael's also saying here what happened to his footwork close to the line. He used to do that little shimmy thing. So yeah.
Yeah, he had good footwork. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, moving on. So Dylan Walker. Dylan Walker, so far this season, has had 12 appearances, 1 try, 25 tackle breaks, post contact meters 480.9, average hit ups 10.8 there, offloads 4, tackles made 318 tackles. Well, 93.3% tackle efficiency, and average running meters of 132, total running meters of 1,594 to Dylan Walker. And I've got to say, Dylan Walker, I've been really impressed with his season to date. I think he's been really good there. You know, he's obviously in a position he's played in. You know, he's played a bit of lock. He's played off the bench. He's Mr. Fix-It, I think Dylan Walker is. He's one of those players that you can put him in anywhere. You feel reliable that he will get the job done. Do you necessarily agree with that? I look at the way he's been going the last couple of weeks in that lock position. He's done a great job there, and whether you need him on the bench, he can just fill that role.
Yeah, for sure. Like again, we always have to use last year as a reference, but
Yeah.
I think he showed what he could do off the bench. So I kind of
Mm.
thought going into this season that just keep him there, do not change what is broken. But once we saw him play lock and just
Yep.
the speed that he was able to deliver at lock, that kind of I feel unlocked the back line, especially when it came to like the fourth and fifth place. Um, it was amazing. I would say that probably what's not helped them is a little bit of experimentation from the coaching. Like when he went to
Yeah.
that second row,
Yeah.
I actually thought he could do well because he's obviously played center. I feel like
Mm.
center a lot of their natural progression is if they stay the same size and still have a bit of their speed, they'll stay at the center position. But a lot of them go into a second row position. So I thought,
Yep.
hey, maybe it's just a natural progression. He knows how to kind of stay out on his line and run those lines. Yeah, I would say that didn't work
Mm.
when they did have him there. And he's also
Yep.
filled out center and also halves. So
Yeah.
he's played it all around, been a Mr. Fix It. But I think we've seen that him going into a lock and Tohu coming onto the bench, I think we've seen a lot more potential from that. So given that, and like you said, he's made a few tackles this year too. I give him a 7 for how he's played this year.
Yep. I'm actually going to give him a 8. Yeah, an 8. I just feel like what he's been doing this season has been enough for me to prove that he deserves a rating quite a good rating there. So yeah, I'll give him an 8, and going to be interesting to see how he goes at the back end of the season as well, and some of these other players that we've already talked about, especially. So yeah, and Dylan Walker is solid, said Jose. He slowed his get up sometimes just due to getting smashed up a bit. Yeah, he gets quite smashed up regularly there. And Dylan Walker's starting has become a must now, in my opinion. And Tarns is agreeing with you, bang on Ty. And Ryan's also saying here Walker has impressed me. And Tarns is also going with an 8 for Dylan Walker. Okay, so Jackson Ford. Jackson Ford, 17 appearances, 3 tries. Interesting, he's scored 3 tries this season. 4 line breaks, 1 offload, 640 tackles made. Tackle efficiency of 93.6%. Average running meters 104. Total running meters of 1,779. Therefore, Jackson Ford, what do you reckon? What do you make out of his performances?
Yeah, we kind of know what we're going to get out of Jackson in terms of his work rate.
Yep.
He works very hard, and I see that every week.
Mm.
I think putting him to prop, I thought that unlocked a bit more of him. I think it was just for his fortunate self. He's a bit of a slimmer guy out there, so him running a prop, created a bit of speed in the middle. And I thought he did really, really well. And yeah, again, still worked his butt off when he was there.
Mm,
The only thing I have to say about Jackson is like it doesn't give me any X Factor vibes. And I feel like part of being a winning NRL team is having a lot of your players being quite exponentially good, especially in those positions. So
mm,
I feel he's been solid. I'm not going to say he's had necessarily a bad year. There's been some few moments of him, and again, I think it's his hands that let him down the most. I feel like
yeah,
he's got a challenge with that. He had it last year, and I'd say a little bit better this year. It'll be interesting to know what's the difference from last year to this year in terms of his errors in hands. But yeah, he for me is like he's consistent and showing up, going to put in the hard yards. But I'm not going to expect like something crazy from him every week. So say that I gave him a 6.5, similar to
yeah,
AFB, only because I feel like he's been beyond standard, but I
yeah.
haven't been like seen anything crazy. Where I feel AFB probably hasn't played to his potential.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah. So Tahi Bros just saying, yeah, really good show, team. So pump the likes button, everyone. So yeah, smash the likes if you haven't done so. Like the live stream, everyone. Yeah, and if you have new viewer or returning viewer to the channel, make sure you do subscribe. Click subscribe button down below, subscribing to the channel. But yeah. So Jackson Ford, I'll probably give him a 6.5. Out of 10 for me. Obviously, Tans is saying here, yeah, he does have those. He is good, but bro, stop with the obstructions. Yeah,
Oh yes,
he
and
tends
that
to,
too.
yeah, he tends to get into that position way too often. So and of course, one thing I do say is he gives away a penalty or makes it odd here and then. So sort of one
Mhm.
sort of habit that I think he's I do get a bit worried about and a bit annoyed about with him, but you know he's still, he's doing all right, but he's not really standing out as a brilliant performance. Yeah, so yeah, Michael is, yeah, he's got a big motor. Yeah, he's definitely got a big motor. Hello to Jacko. Jacko's back in the chat. Good to see you, Jacko. And Jacko's also saying Jacko's the man. So Jacko's saying Jacko's the man there for that one. So Mitchell Barnett. Actually, want to look at Mitchell Barnett. So I think Mitchell Barnett's been our best forward this season. Very consistent. He's had 16 appearances, 2 tries, 35 tackle breaks, post contact meters of 1,058.2, average hit ups of 15.9, offloads 21, tackles made 497 tackles, 94% tackle efficiency. Geez, 158 average running meters on total running meters of 2,529. Boy, these stats are crazy. What are your thoughts, man? I think Mitchell Barnett has been, he's been brilliant. He's been brilliant. He's been very consistent. He's a leader. What more can I say, man? He's been on another level, and of course he's been unlucky to miss Origin the first two games. Missed out on selection, but he's in that game 3 team next Wednesday night. So yeah, what are your thoughts here on Barney? I'm just going to be straight and simple here. I'm going to give him a 9. Yeah, it's probably the highest rating I can give. I'm going to give him a 9 for me.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm giving him a 9 as well, and there's not much to say. Everyone sees it every weekend. He's been consistent. He's been tough, both on attack and also defense. And I think the only thing I wanted to point out is that what we've seen is when he's away, it kind of feels a little bit like unsure about how forward's been doing something.
yeah,
So
yeah,
he's kind of been the glue to our team, and he's led from the front every single game. And it's exciting next year if we're going to have him and James Fisher Harris as our guys leading
yeah.
us up. You know, oh wow, it's going to be amazing to see. But in terms of this year, he's had to go from prop to second row.
Mm,
He's had to change, and he's delivered. Like I feel like he's delivered. I'm like, why are you changing him from prop? He's doing really mean. And like, oh, actually, don't mind him at second row. He does mean there too. So, yeah, Barney for me a 9. People, why not a 10? I think there's probably still a little bit more room for him to be crazy. And like, I still think it's not a 10 yet, but I definitely think a 9 is a reflection of how great he's been for us, and wish him well on his New South Wales debut, because he deserves it.
Yeah, and Jacko's just saying here that Barney's been our best player by quite a distance. Yeah, I have to agree on that one. Jose is also saying future captain, he reckons. Um, and Tans is saying here Mitch has dominated. He's got to be the best prop and back rower this year. Ryan's also saying here our best player for sure this year. Jazz is saying player of the season, top 5 all-time signings. Yeah, I can't disagree with that. And Michael's also saying he's really developed. I think he stole AFB's footwork, added dimensions to his game. And nice ties is Tahi Bro. And Jose is saying here that Simon Manning medalist for 2024. And I can't argue against that one. But what can you say about Barney? He's been just on another level, in my opinion. So, yeah, great. He's having a great season. And Tohu Harris. So Tohu Harris here, 14 appearances, six tackle breaks, 630.6 post contact meters, average hit ups 11.2, free offloads, 517 tackles made, 95.4 tackle efficiency, average running meters of 132, and total running meters of 1,854 for Tohu Harris. So yeah, interesting season it's been for Tohu. What do you take out of this year for him? Well, this season so far.
Yeah, we talked about it, right? Like I
Yeah.
feel like he's adapted to being on the bench.
Yep.
I might be wrong, but the way I see it, just looks banged up and just looks like he's it's affected his game. And I think I said this before, but hopefully him out with his wrist injury gets the time to kind of rejuvenate and hopefully
Yep.
come back stronger. And by coming back, I think that's on the bench, playing that role or not playing the role, but switching with that Dylan there, and then being another forward off the bench. I think one of the things for me that's been very interesting about his game, because he's been kind of Mr. Reliable for through most of his years. Like, he's been a fix-it dude too. If you think about those years, I go all the way back to his Storm years, and even think about himself when he was in the Kiwis, he was Mr. Fix-it, and we didn't expect X Factor stuff from him. But when he came to the Warriors, there was just the way that he played. He became more reliable. He's super reliable. Tackled his heart out, and was always good with kind of being a ball middle forward. Playing with the ball and being our Isaac Yao in our team. But this year he's dropped a lot more ball, especially in moments where we're I can't remember what the exact game, but there were games where we're trying to set up for drop goals, and he's the one that's dropped it, and there's just been some unreliable things from his game. And again, I kind of put it back to he's just potentially worn out. So in saying that, I gave him a 5. I think he's been he's been there, he's played all right, but I think the reason I could have easily given him a 4, but the reason why I gave him a 5 is because he's shown that maybe bench is a position for him.
Yeah, and Tans is just saying here she gives Tohu a 6, and I'm probably gonna echo those words and probably say I'll give him a 6 here. And Jose is saying Tohu's still been with limited minutes. Jacko's just pointing out here that is still surprised that we signed Tohu for another year, but hopefully I'm proven wrong, and he has a great 2025 season. Yeah, a bit surprised there, but so Jay Savanga. So Jay Savanga had 12 appearances. He had 1 try. So he's 22 tackle breaks, post contact meters of 421.8, average hit ups 10.2, offloads 4, 227 tackles made. Tackle efficiency 91.2%, average running meters 95, and our total running meters 1,142 for Jazz. So if you look at Jazz's season, yeah, I mean, what do you make out of his season?
Oh well, I think when he started off real poor,
Yep.
and I think there was a time where even he apologized for the way he was playing at the start of the year.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's been a few games, and still
Mm.
not back to back, but there's been a few games where he's shown me that it's actually really good to have him on the bench. And we've
Yep.
always known he's going to be, tough and get into other, the opposition's head. He was doing that definitely in the weekend. Like I
Yeah.
don't know how many times we saw him in an incident, and that's because he's just competitive and probably wants to win and probably egging them
Mm.
on. But I feel like he's actually stepped up a bit more as the season's got on.
Yep.
Titans game, well, he wasn't the only one, but I don't think it was a great game by him. He was missing tackles and missing up a lot of things, but in and around that, I've actually liked the way that Jazz is kind of, credits him. He's built upon himself this year where he wasn't really doing well at the start of the year. So saying that, I actually gave him a 6. I was leaning more to a
Mm.
5, but I actually gave him a 6 purely on because I
Yep.
feel I'm basing him off actually his role as the enforcer off the bench, and I feel like he's actually shown more than most times that he can be that. Just didn't start off that way anyway.
Yep. I'll give Jazz a 6, and also I forgot to give a rating for Tohu as well. So yeah, I'll give Tohu a 6 as well for that one. But yeah, look, I think Jazz started off slowly, of course. Didn't have a lot of game time, but I think since he's been back on the side, I think he's had some good enough performances. The big question is contract talks. What's going to happen with him next season? Is he going to re-sign or not? So I don't know. What do you reckon? Do you think they should re-sign Jazz? Because that's the big question. How is he going to be at the club next season?
Yeah, I think he's worth a re-sign. And I
Yeah.
think it comes down to the kind of amount of contract in this particular case, given that we've got a lot of young forwards coming through. But I think he's
Yeah.
played well enough to say he gets another spot. But
Yeah.
also, hopefully, he can see the amount of talent coming through and he continues to step up.
Yeah. And Jacko's just saying here, re-sign Jazz, but not on big money. He can help youngsters in Cup as well, giving them a tough edge. And what's this? Jacko's saying here? A couple months ago, not too sure what he's talking about here. In the live chat, but yeah, I think he's talking about Jazz, is he? No, I don't think Jazz is.
Might
I
be.
haven't heard any. I haven't heard any news in regards to if he's re-signed or not. Yeah,
I have no idea.
sure about that one. Not too sure what he's meaning there. Yeah, Kurt Capewell. So Kurt Capewell had 11 appearances. So 2 line breaks, 5 offloads, 344 tackles made. Tackle efficiency 91.5%. Average running meters 64. Total running meters of 707. So, what do you take out of Kurt Capewell? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so I was quite high on the signing at the start of the year, and
Yeah.
not because he was going to, do anything
Oh, so
crazy, but if you look at the Queensland and New South Wales game, he's been put into starting 11, and it's because he actually has a lot to his game that you can trust. And unfortunately, I don't think we've seen him much of that at the Warriors yet. I've been trying to hold my tongue because I actually like the signing, like I said, and I think there's a lot more that he can offer. I do, however, thought we unlocked him a bit more in the weekend. We saw him at running the left side second row, and I feel like that's more his position.
yeah,
So I feel like that changed things where he was running right, kind of being being the second row for Sean Johnson. So yeah, it's
yeah,
we may see a greater side to him. Well, we'll see
yeah,
how the New South Wales and Queensland game goes. But I think if he
yeah.
continues to hold down that left second row, I think
All
more
right.
can be made of him. But
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of the season so far, he hasn't been living up to what I expected from him personally. So I gave him a 5. Just going off the game so far.
Yeah, I've probably not been too impressed with him. I wasn't too high on the signing at the start. I know a lot of people were quite big on the signing. He hasn't quite shown enough at the moment. So yeah, I'll probably say, yeah, I'll give him a 5. yeah, I wasn't too big on the side at the start of the season, but obviously there's still time for him to show that he wants. Carnes is
Yeah,
saying here Capewell 5. Yeah,
and what I would say is that oh, he got sprayed last week, but
yeah,
what I watch about his game, man, you actually see him. He communicates a lot to the boys in terms of where they should be. So I remember really early into the
yep,
piece, like there were some times where the opposition would kick it. There's a chance for our fullback. I can't remember if it was Tuo Piki or Chance, that opportunity to go down the short side. But our wingers and our centres were trailing and not getting back into a position to actually make it an opportunity. So
yep,
I was watching, you can see Capewell actually talking to the wingers centres like, this is where we need to be, like get ourselves in position so we can get down or have an opportunity. So for me, that's what Capewell brings. Now, obviously, we want to see that more in his own individual performance, which I think that's been lacking personally too.
yep.
But he brings this kind of like awareness to the game that I think the Warriors actually lacked last year, and that's probably why we didn't go as further. It's because we just weren't doing the extra little things. But there's no point doing the extra little things if you ain't getting the main things right first, right? So I feel like he kind of needs to still apply that to his game, and hopefully him at left side, second row for the rest of the season, we get to see that.
Yeah, and just actually looking at some of these comments. So Capewell's a worker sometimes. That is all you need. Tarns is saying I'm probably be inclined to say 4, although she's put Capewell at 5 here. Jacko's saying here that Capewell signing for 3 years was a mystery to me, but obviously the coaches know for more than me. Capewell, defense good, attack lackluster, says Jazz. And yeah, I think there's any more. Yep, and Slater has him in Origin, so obviously he does stuff I don't see. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not too sure why. But I think Billy rates him quite highly from what I've seen there. But yeah, I think that's pretty much a lot of the players that played this year. Is there any other players you maybe want to have a look like a special mention to? I think we've covered up on most of the players in the squad. So any other thing you'd like to cover up on there?
No, I think obviously Ali and Afor have
Oh, yep,
been unfortunate of not getting as much time as they
yeah,
probably would want. And I think rightfully so. There's just forwards in front of them at the moment. But I think yeah, the only other comment in terms of people they're playing, like all the New South Wales Cup boys that have played, they've all stood up. From Ali to was it Jacob Laban? Like those have kind of been a bit more
yeah,
prominent. But like Leka last week, Roach, even Zion when he got their debut, like like it shows that we've got a lot of a lot of goodness coming through. It's just how do you get them into the squad and blood them right, but also know that as results potentially come, some of these boys will have to kind of wait in the wings. So yeah, I feel we've got some good players. Oh, even Wyler Graham, he was good. Like I think one thing that he brings is because I don't know if he's always played center, but he just naturally um, he was naturally out there as a center, and I think that's what's again, it's an excuse, 100%. But I feel like that's what we haven't, we can't see from Roger is because he's not necessarily a natural center, so he's still adapting. But when you put a center in a center position, man, he was great. I thought he was good. So
yeah,
I'm kind of contradicting myself by saying this, but I feel like we need a center playing center, and I feel like I still feel Roger can kind of grow into that position, but we've just seen when young New South Wales Cup player that hadn't played NRL step up. He stepped up because he just knew how to just knew where to position himself and knew where to be, which can take some time to develop, which we're seeing with RTS. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
yeah. And I'm just saying, Michael was saying here, Jacob Laban as well. I think there's another one
Yep.
special mention too. He had some good games as well when he played for us for the first grade side. And Jacob's also saying here, Big Ali was developing nicely, but seems to have fallen down the pecking order. Yeah, he has definitely for sure. And Michael's also saying here, and Zion, which is another good player, coming through. That is another one that highly rate moving forward. But yeah, well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Now, it's been a bit of a long one, guys. So apologies if it's gone a bit longer than I would have thought. But it was great to have Tyrone on. I really do appreciate him coming on and having a chat about the season so far for the Warriors. And it'll be interesting back into the season, no doubt about it. But we'll definitely get Tyrone back on again some other time. So appreciate you coming on, bro. And thanks for coming on the channel, and thanks for your insights as well.
Yeah, no, appreciate being on. Thank you for having me on, and shout out to our crew, the Warrior Fan TV crew. I've seen you been chatting in here tons, and if you ever want to talk more about the Warriors, we're on Monday as well. But as you can see, a lot of us creators and talkers of the game love to kind of share space. So appreciate for allowing me to talk in. And 2.5 hours, sharks. Time flies when you're talking about the Warriors, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, you can't help it. You think you're going to have a short show, and then it goes for quite longer than you expected. So look, I really appreciate it, Tyrone. Really appreciate you coming on, and go and check out the great work that Warriors Fan TV do. Shout out to Nick and all the Warriors Fan TV crew, Rio. Who's been on the channel before, and I think got something lined up with him next week. So he's going to come on as well. So good to have you on here, and Rio on, and Tan's on as well. So it's great to have the Warriors Fan TV crew, and go and subscribe. Go and subscribe to Warriors Fan TV and go check out their Monday night Korero show. Go watch that as well. So give that a watch as well Monday night there. But thanks to the viewers. I just want to thank the viewers for tuning in. I want to thank the viewers for watching. So thanks to Hosea in the chat there, Tahi Bro. We had Jacko in the chat, Jazz, Ryan, Michael, and also I think Ryan as well. We've had a few others that have popped into the chat now and then whilst going live. So appreciate you all. Appreciate all the love and support. Please, guys, don't forget to give this video a like. Make sure you click the thumbs up button on the live stream, or if you're watching it back, like the live stream anyway. Subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel if you are a new viewer or a regular viewer to the channel as well. It's all really much appreciated. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Look, it's going to be a really interesting back end of the season for the Warriors, no doubt about it. But, look, we can't wait to see what the boys are going to do for the rest of the year. But thanks for tuning in. Up the Wars, go the Warriors. And have a good rest of the week, everyone. Have a good weekend ahead as also. And also enjoy the footy and the Origin as well. Have a good one. See you, everyone.
Up the Wars.
Up the Wars. Cheers.